Chapter 1672. Because Feng Ling's life was hanging by a thread, Ethereal chose a random room to treat him as soon as they exited the secret passage. This time, Feng Ling's injuries were different from the ones that Ethereal had treated before. In addition, he was his own brother, so he was very sad. He was also afraid that his master would be sad to see Feng Ling in this state, so he sent everyone out. However, Shui Ling couldn't be driven away. Kong Ling originally didn't want her to stay. He didn't want her to suffer a heavier blow, but when it came to Feng Ling, Shui Ling's stubbornness made him unable to bear it, so he allowed her to stay and help. When they exited the stone room, he had already given Feng Ling a few 9 revolutions life-prolonging pills to save his life. However, it wasn't too early to celebrate, because Feng Ling's breathing had begun to weaken again. He opened the medicine box and took out silver needles. He applied them to Feng Ling's major acupoints to temporarily keep him alive. Then, he quickly wrote down a prescription and asked the servants to buy it for torment. Water Spirit, help me. Take off Feng Ling's clothes. Ethereal had no choice. He had to protect Feng Ling's heart and veins, so he couldn't do this. Moreover, the people who came with him were all men. They couldn't do such delicate work because Feng Ling's injuries were too serious. He didn't dare to use the hands of the people in Gong Sunfei's residence. Water Spirit didn't say anything and went forward with hot water. She prepared to take off Feng Ling's clothes. However, she didn't know when the injuries were caused. His flesh and blood were already sticking to his clothes. She finally understood why Ethereal had asked people to prepare scissors. Ethereal wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He glanced at Water Spirit, whose face was full of tears. She was gritting her teeth and cutting off Feng Ling's clothes with trembling hands. He couldn't bear to watch anymore and turned away. Why was it so difficult for the fierce cavalry? They loved to part, but couldn't ask for it. At this time, the door was pushed open. Cheng Yanluo rushed in with a medicine box. Ethereal's eyes lit up. Why are you here? Qingyan knows about the situation here and asked me to come and help. What's the situation now? Cheng Yanluo hurried over to him and asked anxiously as she put down the medicine box. At this time, her gaze fell on the handsome man on the couch. Seeing the defeated look on his face, her eyes widened. Ethereal whispered in her ear, "Little Yan, his condition is worse than Pang Zijing's. This time, we have to race against time." Cheng Yanluo already had an idea when she saw Feng Ling's complexion. When she heard his pleading voice, she couldn't help but hold his hand. "I'll do my best." She knew that this was his close friend, his brother. If he couldn't save him, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Although Ethereal deliberately lowered his voice so that she wouldn't hear, Water Spirit still heard it. She had just cut open Feng Ling's clothes. The scars on his skin told her how much he had suffered before this. Her heart was in so much pain that she couldn't breathe. When she heard Ethereal's words, she fell to her knees with a thud. "Ethereal Yanluo, I beg you. No matter what, you have to save his life. We've been separated for 10 years, and we haven't even spoken 10 sentences today. I can't let him go just like that." Water Spirit kowtowed to the ground. Her hands clasped tightly to the ground. Her tears wet the green tiles in front of her. Ethereal's eyes were wet. They had all grown up together. Who didn't know each other's personalities? Water Spirit was a stubborn person who didn't bow down easily. Only Feng Ling could make her behave like a young girl of her age. Now for Feng Ling, she had cast aside her dignity and knelt down again and again. How could her older brothers not feel sad and sympathetic? Cheng Yanluo didn't dare to accept such a big gesture. She immediately went forward to help her up. Her heart ached and she said sadly, "Water Spirit, don't worry. We'll do our best." When Shui Ling heard her say that she would go all out, her heart sank. Even these 2 divine doctors couldn't guarantee that Feng Ling would be able to survive. She couldn't help but look at the person on the bed. Her whole body trembled. The first thing to do now was to stop the bleeding and clean the wounds to prevent them from worsening. When Cheng Yanluo helped to apply medicine and saw the new and old wounds, she couldn't help but curse. "You're inhumane." Ethereal glanced at Water Spirit, who was quietly wiping Feng Ling's body. She touched Xiaoyan's hand and shook her head. Cheng Yanluo knew that her words would only make Water Spirit feel worse, so she immediately shut her mouth. After bandaging the wounds, Cheng Yanluo took a bit of Feng Ling's blood for identification. Ethereal burned the dagger until it was bright red. Then she removed the iron lock on Feng Ling's shoulder blade. This scene would make anyone who heard it cry. The inner room was so busy that their feet didn't even touch the ground. In the courtyard, the atmosphere was so tense that it could drip water. A person who looked like a steward knelt in front of everyone, trembling. This person was the steward of Gongsun Fei's residence. He was also an old man who followed Suyu. Gongsun Shui's men had captured him when Xiao Su and the others entered the underground tunnel. He was also the only other person besides Gongsun Fei who knew about Feng Ling's situation. Repeat what you said to me just now. If you miss anything, it won't be as simple as bringing disaster to your entire family, Gongsun Shui said calmly. Her tone was filled with a strong murderous intent. This steward, whose surname was Su, didn't dare to resist. He prostrated himself on the ground and repeated what he had just said. That young master was brought back by an aide sent out by my master 10 years ago. At that time, the aide brought assassins to eliminate Murong Yinxian. However, he didn't expect that Murong Yinxian would disappear after entering another country. After searching for him for a long time, he was about to return when he encountered a fierce battle. At that time, the young master was the one who led the troops. The aide said that he didn't expect to meet such a brave, intelligent, and talented martial artist. He thought that the young master had died in the battle, and wanted to find a place to bury him out of pity. He didn't expect that he was still alive, so he rescued him and brought him back to the Yu clan. At that time, our master wanted to control the Yu clan, but he didn't have many capable subordinates. Coincidentally, the aide brought the young master back. Our master treated the young master with respect, and was very friendly to him. After talking with him, he discovered that he was a talented general, and wanted to keep him. However, the young master said that once he recovered from his injuries, he wanted to go back. How could our master agree? However, the young master insisted. So our master came up with a plan to have the young master train a group of death warriors for him. As long as they were trained well, our master would send the young master back. The young master agreed. After training him for half a year, he happened to discover that our master was lying to him. Furthermore, our master put a slow-acting poison in his food in order to control him. The young master didn't want to be used, so he planned to escape. The first time he escaped from his room and was caught. The second time he was discovered by the guards and was caught. The third time he escaped the furthest. However, our master sent 300 soldiers to chase him. He killed nearly half of them before he was defeated because of his lack of strength. The young master escaped 3 times. If he hadn't been poisoned, he would have escaped long ago. Chapter 1673. Master doesn't like disobedient people, so after the third time he imprisoned him and forced him to work for him. Unfortunately, that young master is a stubborn person. No matter what kind of torture he suffered, he didn't lower his head. So he poisoned, whipped, and used all kinds of methods. When housekeeper Su said this, he clearly felt the temperature around him turn cold. The person who was emitting the cold air was sitting in front of him, but he didn't dare to raise his head. He was afraid that if he did, he would lose his life. Everyone also felt the cold air coming from Xiao Su's body. They, as outsiders, couldn't bear the torture that Feng Ling suffered day after day, year after year, let alone Xiao Su who had watched them grow up. Everyone on Xiao Lai cavalry went through wind and rain with him. Although they weren't brothers, they were better than brothers. How could it not hurt to be hit in the palm and the back of the hand? Xiao Su gripped the armrest tightly, crushing the 100-year-old wood without even realizing it. Continue. Housekeeper Su was scared out of his wits, and he immediately continued to speak while trembling. Because Feng Ling wasn't willing to work for Su Yu, he was tortured in the Su family for nearly 10 years. Su Yu wanted to accept this talent at first, but in the end, he wasn't willing to submit. Su Yu gradually lost the thought he had in the past, and wanted to break his pride. Because Su Yu was a proud person, he didn't allow anyone to challenge his authority. Until a few months ago, when Gongsun Fei saw Feng Ling by chance and was shocked. She asked Su Yu for him. Su Yu was full of hatred for Feng Ling. He thought that if he was willing to help him, He would already be sitting in the highest position in the Yu family. So he agreed to his niece, wanting to use her hands to humiliate him, who told him to be neither soft nor hard. Then let him have a taste of being humiliated by a woman. However, Gong Sunfei also suffered a lot at Feng Ling's hands. She couldn't get close to him, so she became angry and locked him up. She wanted to break his spirit, but the situation suddenly became tense. She didn't have the time to care about Feng Ling, so Feng Ling was able to keep his life until reinforcements came. If one were to use a sentence to describe Feng Ling's 10 years, it was like walking through hell again and again. After nearly 10 years of torture, if not for his strong will, who could endure it? If it weren't for the hope and obsession in his heart, he wouldn't have been able to hold on. After Butler Su finished speaking, the room fell silent. However, this kind of silence made one's heart turn cold. Gong Sun Shui sighed softly in her heart. Su Yu and the others had done a lot of harm. First, they had destroyed the Morong family, and now they had imprisoned such a talented young man for 10 years. Their crimes were too numerous to count. She looked at Xiao Su and said seriously, "I will give you justice for what the Su family has done to young Master Feng Ling." Xiao Yao immediately said, "This was all done by those evil people. What does it have to do with you? Besides, you're a victim, aren't you?" Gong Suanxue shook her head. "After all, this happened in the Moon Clan. As the clan leader, I can't escape responsibility." Xiao Yao was just about to say something when his brother spoke up. "Clan leader Gongsun, second brother is right. This has nothing to do with you. I'm not the kind of person who can't tell right from wrong. I won't let any of these people who have harmed Feng Ling live. Now, I only hope that clan leader Gongsun can promise me one thing." Xiao Su looked at Gongsun Shui and said, "What is it?" Gongsun Shui didn't know what he wanted to do. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes, which were full of murderous intent. "When the dust has settled between the Sun and Moon clans, I will take these people from the Su family away. I hope you won't interfere." Gong Sun Shui immediately guessed what he wanted to do. If it was in the past, she wouldn't have let him take them away so easily. However, it didn't matter now. She nodded without hesitation. "All right, I'll leave them to you. The Moon clan won't say anything." Xiao Su was satisfied with her understanding of the situation. At this moment, Water Spirit appeared in front of everyone, full of murderous intent. Her eyes were full of madness. "Where's Gong Sun Fei? I'm going to kill her." Everyone was stunned by her hatred and murderous aura. Shouldn't she be taking care of Feng Ling in the room right now? Why was she here? Xiao Su sensed that something was wrong with her. He looked at her and said, "Water Spirit, what happened?" These words seemed to have touched Water Spirit's fragile heart. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she was like a sparrow that had walked into a desperate situation. She cried out in despair, "Master Feng Ling he." Seeing her like this, everyone thought that Feng Ling couldn't be saved. Their expressions changed and they all stood up. At this moment, Ethereal, who had followed behind them, saw that his master's face was so dark that he looked like he was about to kill someone. He immediately explained, "Feng Ling is still alive. However, he's not only severely injured, but he's also poisoned. The poison has spread to his eyes, and he's now blind. Although we've stabilized his condition, I'm afraid he has less than a year to live." How could this be? Xiao Su couldn't help but take a step back. He reached out to support himself on the table, his eyes full of disbelief. "Where is that person? I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her." Water Spirit had already gone mad. She turned around and was about to rush out. Xiao Su appeared behind her in a flash. He raised his hand and struck Water Spirit's neck. She immediately fainted. He handed Water Spirit to Cheng Yanluo. "Take good care of her." Cheng Yanluo nodded. She looked at the pitiful girl in her arms with pity, then brought her away to rest. Xiao Su turned to Ethereal. "Is there a chance of recovery?" Ethereal's throat was dry. He said with difficulty, "There's no way at the moment. The injuries that have accumulated over the past 10 years have already hollowed out his body. He's already in an unhealthy condition, and now he's poisoned. It's even more difficult. Even if the poison is cured, I'm afraid that his weak body won't be able to make it." Everyone present couldn't help but look away. Xiao Su's face revealed a trace of sadness. He clenched his fist, then loosened it after a moment. He slowly raised his hand and placed it on Ethereal's shoulder. No matter what, we have to protect him. That's not just one life, but 2 lives. Everyone knew that if Wind Spirit died this time, Water Spirit would probably follow him. Ethereal's eyes were red. According to the extent of his injuries, he should have died more than 10 times. But he survived. This subordinate thinks that he should be able to do it this time as well. Even if he couldn't, he had to. It was unusually cold today. The wind in the evening was even stronger. Hualing came out of Wind Spirit's room and ran straight to the tall tree in the courtyard. He smashed his fists on the thick tree trunk, creating several holes in the dark tree trunk. The back of his hand was also bleeding. But he didn't seem to feel anything. He dejectedly leaned against the tree trunk, looking at the people who were rushing back. He slowly opened his mouth, his voice somewhat drifting. Turin, why do you think that person who can laugh, teach people a lesson, and patiently teach me martial arts, is just lying there quietly, covered in scars, as if he's not breathing? I really fucking hate him. Turin stood still. He looked at the person who was always laughing, covering his eyes and crying silently. His eyes gradually also turned red. Men don't cry easily, only when they're deeply hurt. Chapter 1674. Turin's return was an accident. Because he and Mu Ling were assisting Jin Xian on the front lines, Xiao Su did not tell them about Feng Ling to prevent them from being distracted. This time they brought back good news. When the Su family attacked the Ri family, they were defeated by them one by one. Now that the Su family was defeated, Jin Xian was absorbing the Su family's army, which was very satisfying. The only fly in the ointment was that Su Yu had escaped. However, they had already sent people to pursue him. They believed that it would not be long before they caught him. It was also because they had arrived at Luoqing that they knew that their master and the young consorts were also here. They immediately rushed to report. When Turin and the others found out that Feng Ling did not die in the battle at Shui Slope, they were wild with joy. However, when they found out that he had experienced inhumane treatment and was seriously injured, they wanted to skin Su Yu and the others alive. Previously, Chu Qingyan and the others had lived in an inn. Now that Su Yu had lost power, Gong Sunfei had been arrested, and Feng Ling was seriously injured and could not be moved. After discussion, they decided to temporarily live in Gong Sunfei's residence. Gong Sunfei was not a good person in any way. The only good thing about her was that she knew how to enjoy life. This residence was even more comfortable and luxurious than Gong Sunfei's palace. It was also very suitable for the 2 pregnant women at home. Thus, Xiao Su personally went back to pick up his wife and settled her down here. Chu Qingyan had already learned about Feng Ling at the inn. Later in the carriage, she heard her Big Ice Cube's explanation. She could not help but sigh in her heart. Thus, when she entered the residence and saw Water Spirit, she did not say anything. She gave Water Spirit a hug. At this time, words of comfort were not as warm as a hug. The tears that had accumulated in Water Spirit's eyes instantly flowed down. She cried loudly, venting out all the pain, sorrow, fear, and despair in her heart. Chu Qingyan hugged her. She was pregnant, and it was easy for her emotions to fluctuate. She closed her eyes and cried. The person in her arms was crying like a child, so helpless. She was no longer the beautiful woman she had met for the first time. She had washed away all her glamour, and was now so fragile. She looked at the person sleeping on the bed. Although his face was thin and his lips were pale, she could still imagine his elegant hair and handsome appearance. What a handsome man. It was a pity that he had been tortured for 10 years. She did not know if he would be able to endure this time. Little consort, do you think that Feng Ling will get better? Water Spirit was like a boat that had lost its course, helpless. Chu Qingyan hugged her tightly and nodded. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Didn't he endure for 10 years just to wait for you? Now that you are here, how could he give up so easily? Yes, yes, yes. She leaned on the shoulder of the little consort and looked at the person on the bed. Her tears flowed again. He has not seen me properly yet. He still wants to take me to see the peach blossoms for 10 miles. I still want to accompany him to see the stars on the stone peaks of Green Mountain. He will not give up like this. He has never been a person who admits defeat. Yes, there were two people standing outside the door. Even though they did not enter the room, they could hear the conversation inside clearly. Ethereal looked at her master's cold expression. She did not know if she should say something. Xiao glanced at Ethereal, who had a conflicted expression. He had never been a person who could hold back his words. He could tell from her expression. So he said coolly, "You and I are not strangers. If you have something to say it directly." Kongling sighed and looked up with a bitter expression. "Master, an hour ago, this subordinate and Little Yen conducted a thorough examination of Fengling's body and found that his internal organs were severely damaged. We also have some idea of the poison, but since ancient times, there has been no antidote for this poison. Originally, this poison wouldn't act up so quickly, but Fengling's body is too weak, and the poison has already spread throughout his body. Originally, we said he would live for a year, but I'm afraid he won't even live for half a year." Xiao hadn't expected this result, and was stunned for a moment. With Shui Ling and the little guy's words still ringing in his ears, Xiao turned his gaze to the distant mountains. The thick layer of fog made it impossible to see the road ahead. In the end, Kongling heard him say in a low voice, "Yen was right just now. Since he managed to hold on until now, it means that he's not fated to die yet. Kongling, no matter what, I'm counting on you. We cannot lose Fengling." Ethereal's eyes were bitter. She tried to smile. "All right. This subordinate will go and read the ancient book now. No matter what, I will protect his life." Xiao closed his eyes and nodded. When Chu Qingyan walked out of the room, only her big ice cube was outside. Xiao heard footsteps and turned around. Seeing her red eyes and nose, he walked up to her and reached out to touch her face. "Are you in pain?" She nodded and said softly, "My heart is in pain." After crying, there was a nasal sound. Her voice was soft and pitiful. Xiao hugged her body and walked back. He wrapped her cold little hand in his palm and said in a low voice, "Don't think too much. You have to pay more attention to the child in your belly." Big Ice Cube's expression was calm. She could not tell whether he was happy or angry, but she knew that Big Ice Cube was feeling worse than anyone else. She thought back to Fengling, who was lying quietly. Such an outstanding man had to go through so much torture. She could not help but sigh at the cruelty of the heavens. According to Ethereal, you not only poisoned him to prevent him from escaping, but also pierced his shoulder blades with an iron chain, so that he could not use his martial arts. Otherwise, how could the most outstanding subordinate trained by Big Ice Cube not be able to escape from the Sioux residence? Putting herself in the other's shoes, if she was the water spirit and the wind spirit suffered the same fate as the Big Ice Cube, she would probably already have the urge to destroy the world. One could imagine how water spirit was feeling right now. However, they were not involved. Perhaps the pain would be 100 or 1,000 times worse. The baby is very obedient in my belly. Maybe it knows that I'm in a bad mood. She lowered her head and stroked her belly. Only then did the sadness in her eyes lessen. This little monkey knew the severity of the situation. It had been bothering her for the past 2 days, but it was obedient today. Xiao placed his hand on the back of her hand and smiled faintly. "If it's not obedient, I'll teach it a lesson for you when it comes out." Chu Qingyan pouted. "Maybe you won't be able to bear it when the time comes." She did not forget that he said the same thing when she was pregnant with Kong Kong. Later on, he doted on her more than anyone else. It was also after Kong Kong started to remember things that he slowly created the image of a strict father. Xiao smiled but did not say anything. She must have hit the nail on the head. When they returned to the courtyard, Xiao said to her, "Jean Xian will arrive in Luoqing in 2 days." Chu Qingyan was instantly overjoyed. "Really? That's great. Although we've only been apart for half a year, I feel like I haven't seen him and Xining for a long time. I miss them so much." Xiao smiled and patted her head. At this time, only this news could divert her attention and stop her from wallowing in sorrow. Amidst her excitement, Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of something and said anxiously, "Wait, Jean Xian is the sect leader of the Sun clan. He's definitely at odds with the Yu clan. Miss Gongsun is here, they'll definitely meet. What should we do?" Chapter 1675. After being reminded by the little fellow, Xiao Su also thought of this. But I remember that Miss Gongsun had nothing to do with the destruction of the Morong clan. She was only a few years old at the time. Chu Qingyan had already treated Gongsun Shui as one of her own, so she couldn't help but defend her. Even so, the relationship between the Sun clan and the Yu clan has long been predestined. We don't know what Gongsun Shui is thinking. Don't you think that the timing of her appearance here is a bit strange? Although he had been working hard to rescue Feng Ling, he knew the current situation between the Sun clan and the Yu clan. If he was the leader of the Yu clan, he would be guarding the capital to prevent the Sun clan from attacking. But Gongsun Shui did the opposite. She came to this dangerous place with only a few thousand people. It was not enough to fight against the Sun clan. He admired this woman who grew up in a similar environment to him. She was smart and patient. But at this moment, he couldn't understand what she was thinking. After hearing Big Ice Cube's words, Chu Qingyan thought about it carefully and found that it was true. Although we know Miss Gongsun Shui, this is a civil war between the two clans. We can't intervene, and we can't protect her. She came all the way here to save Feng Ling. What good does it do her? She couldn't figure it out. He frowned slightly. No matter what she is thinking, we have to tell second brother that Jin Xian is here. Let him remind Gongsun Shui. He didn't want to side with either side, but seeing that Gongsun Shui had done a lot to save Feng Ling, he felt that it was not wrong to remind her. Yes. Chu Qingyan nodded in agreement. 2 hours later, Xiao appeared in front of Gongsun Shui's door. His expression was solemn, but when he raised his hand to knock on the door, his expression had already returned to its usual frivolous state. Before he knocked for the third time, the door opened from the inside. Gongsun Shui raised her eyebrows and saw the person standing outside. She was slightly confused. What is it? Do I have to have something to ask of you? Xiao opened his fan and said irritatingly. However, when his gaze fell on her messy hair, he wondered if she was sleeping just now. It would be lunchtime soon. Could it be that she had slept until now last night? He had never seen her sleep in before. She woke up before dawn every day. It was really strange. Knowing his character, Gongsun Shui didn't bother to talk to him. She turned around and walked away. Xiao didn't stand on ceremony at all. After sitting down, he suppressed the speech he had prepared and looked at her face. He asked worriedly, "Are you sick? You don't look too good." When he first saw her, her face was so pale that he thought it was because the sunlight was too bright on her body. Now that he was in the room, he realized that it was because her face was too pale, with a trace of sickness. Ever since she was injured, he had never seen her face look so bad. He couldn't help but worry. Gongsun Shui was slightly startled. Coincidentally, there was a mirror not far away. She saw her pale face and sighed in her heart. Perhaps she had been too busy recently and had forgotten to take her medicine. Or perhaps she didn't think about it anymore. She took the teacup, opened the lid, and gently stirred the tea leaves floating on top. She said indifferently, "Maybe it's because I changed my bed. I can't sleep well. It's fine." Xiao nodded, but he didn't believe it. After knowing her for so long, he had never heard of her changing her bed. Maybe she had something she didn't want him to know. He felt a little uncomfortable. The Ice Beauty still treated him as an outsider and didn't want to tell him anything. "Although it's a new bed, your complexion is too bad. I'll ask Miss Chung to take a look at you later." She knew that he was concerned about her, but for some reason, she had to reject him. "No need. The high priest and the others are coming. There will be doctors accompanying them. I'll let them take a look at me then." Xiao's eyes darkened, but he quickly thought of something and raised his eyebrows. He couldn't sit still. "I heard from my big brother that Jin Xian, who is Morong Yinxian, will arrive in Luoqing in 2 days. He's afraid that the two of you will fight when you meet. How about I take you back to the capital now?" His imperial brother had looked for him just now because he wanted him to give her a reminder. After all, the hatred between the two sides was deeply rooted. Once they met, it would be unavoidable to avoid awkwardness. No matter which side got hurt, he didn't want to see it happen. But what was wrong with this Ice Beauty? She knew that the Su family had been defeated, and this place would soon be occupied by the Ri clan. Instead of wanting to leave this place as soon as possible, she even brought the high priest and the others here. Could it be that she wanted to fight the Ri clan to the death here? But she didn't have many soldiers with her. Wasn't this throwing an egg at a rock? Gong Sun Shui knew that he was concerned about her, but she didn't think that at this time, he would stand on her side and want to take her away. Wasn't he Morong Yinshuan's man? Why? She was very puzzled. She thought that as long as it didn't affect the interests of the two clans, he would treat her well. But when the two clans met, he would leave her. After all, their paths were different. Xiao Yao's hand that was holding the fan paused. He didn't understand. Why what? She looked at him blankly. Why don't you stay here? Why do you want to leave with me? She looked at him blankly. Since some words had already been asked, there was no turning back. It was better to go down the dark path. Xiao Yao was stunned by the question. His handsome face was suspiciously red, but he covered it with his fan, only revealing a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. He coughed lightly. He was a little uncomfortable, but he still followed his heart and said seriously, "From the beginning to the end, I only want to stay by your side." Gong Sun Shui was stunned by his words. It was like a spring breeze had brushed past her heart, and something had begun to sprout. She couldn't stop it. She said timidly, "Xiao Yao, you don't have to do this." She didn't want to make things difficult for him, but maybe because her expression was a little bad, her words were as cold as usual, giving people the illusion that she was unreasonable. Xiao Yao thought that after being by her side for so long, even if she was a stone, she would have some warmth. He didn't expect that at this time, she would still treat him as an ordinary passerby. The red on his face faded completely. He stared at her, his smiling eyes full of disappointment and coldness. "Is your heart made of stone? I've done so much. Have I never moved you?" Gong Sun Shui moved her lips, her fingers clenched. Finally, she lowered her eyebrows and restrained her trembling. She said softly, "I'm sorry." There was no need to say anything. These two words were enough to explain everything. No need to be sorry. I forced it. Xiao Yao slowly stood up. His voice was still smiling like before. But if she raised her head, she would see how sad and hurt his eyes were. She listened to the sound of him leaving step by step until the door was closed. Only then did she clutch her chest. Blood flowed out from between her teeth, dripping onto the pure white hem of her clothes. Was the poison acting up early? Chapter 1676. Gong Sun Shui stared blankly at the blooming plum blossoms on her clothes. After a while, she suddenly laughed very softly. He asked, "Is your heart made of stone? I've done so much. Have you never been moved?" She wanted to tell him no, but her chest hurt too much. The taste of blood was too strong. She didn't want him to see this side of her. That was why she hurt him and forced him to leave here. In the past, she didn't understand what it meant to say that a kind word would warm her in winter, but a vicious word would hurt her in June. For someone like her who was born to climb to a higher position, the teachings of others were that no one could disobey you. You were the king of the world. Now she was learning from him. What was the 7 emotions and 6 desires? What was laughter? She slowly understood the fickleness of human nature. She knew that if someone was willing to open their arms for you to rely on, then a vicious word from you would be like a sharp sword stabbing into their heart. It was crueler than anyone else. She knew that he was one of the few people in the world who treated her wholeheartedly. She was like a lost person in the desert who longed for spring water, like a wanderer in the sea who longed for direction, like a child beggar who needed warmth in the cold winter. And he happened to have all that she longed for. She wanted to hold on to him. She didn't want anything else but his company. So she let herself sink into this gentleness that she shouldn't have hoped for. However, no matter how strong the wind was, it had to stop. Her life didn't allow her to stay in this short period of time. She didn't ask for a long time. She only wanted a dream. Now, the bloodstains in front of her reminded her that it was time to wake up. There was another knock on the door. "Sect Master, it's me." Lan Si came. Gong Sun Shui pursed her lips. She took a cloak from the side and put it on to cover the bloodstains on her body before letting him in. "High Priestess, it's been hard on you." Gong Sun Shui looked at the travel-worn person in front of her and said sincerely, there weren't many people in the Yu clan that she could trust. This old man in front of her who had watched her grow up was the person she trusted and respected the most. Lan Si waved his hand and said with a smile, do it while you still can. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to move in the future. After saying that, Lan Si stopped smiling and asked seriously, Sect Master, why did you summon me this time? Is there an urgent matter? Gong Sun Shui raised her eyebrows. The Su clan has been defeated. Lan Si beamed with joy when he heard this. He had already heard about it on the way here. It was simply gratifying. However, it was a pity that the Su family was not defeated by them. This is a good thing. Does the sect master want us to take the opportunity to take back all the cities that the Su family has occupied? He had obeyed the sect leader's orders and brought over 100,000 soldiers. Now that the Sun race had just gone through a huge battle, it was likely that they had not recovered their strength yet. If they counterattacked, the Sun race would not be able to resist at all. In that case, the Sun race would be able to reclaim all of their cities. When that happened, the Sun race and the Moon race would be able to stand on equal footing and would not have to worry about being swallowed up. Wait. He received the sect master's order 3 days ago, but the Su clan had only been defeated 2 or 3 days ago. Could the sect master be a prophet? But Lan Si didn't think too much about it. Anyway, the sect master had always been smart. She was good at thinking ahead. Otherwise, she wouldn't have hidden her strength for so long in this wolf's den. Gong Sun Shui looked at the happy high priestess. She was a little dazed. It had been a long time since she saw the high priestess so happy. It seemed that for so many years, she had been hiding her strength and secretly cultivating her forces. Even the people around her were on guard against the dangers that could come at any time. But now, she might have to disappoint the high priestess. No. Lan Si was stunned. Did he hear wrong? Then what does the sect master mean? He couldn't understand what this girl who was younger than him was thinking. Gong Sun Shui didn't answer him. Instead, she changed the topic. High Priestess Murong Yunxian will arrive in Luoqing in 2 days. As expected, Lan Si was attracted. He immediately blew his beard and glared. That brat came at the right time. We can fight with him and take revenge for the past year. Gong Sun Shui smiled helplessly. The hatred between the Sun clan and the Moon clan was deeply rooted. If the High Priestess was like this, then there was no need to talk about the others. Lan Si glanced at her expression and was a little puzzled. Sect Master, do you have any plans? Gong Sun Shui stood up and walked to the desk. Her cloak fell with her movements, drawing a beautiful arc in the air. She stood in front of the desk and opened the scroll. Lan Si walked forward to take a look. It was a map of North Korea. He couldn't help but look at her. Gong Sun Shui looked at the map and slowly said, High Priestess, do you still remember my father's last wish? Lan Si's hand that was stroking his beard paused. He sighed softly. Your father always wanted to unify North Korea. Unfortunately, he died young. Even though Suyu used some tricks to take over the Sun clan, it couldn't be considered a true unification. Yes. My father said that the hatred between the Sun clan and the Moon clan was too deep. If he wanted to unify them, he needed an opportunity. Gong Sun Shui's gaze swept across the map and landed on Luoqing's location. She smiled faintly. Now that opportunity has arrived. Lan Si's eyes lit up. Do you already have a plan? Gong Sun Shui nodded. However, what she said made Lan Si's jaw drop. I do have a plan, but I can't guarantee that it will succeed. Moreover, the Sun clan and the Moon clan are co-rulers. I can't be the leader. High Priestess, I don't have much time left. Lan Si looked at her with tears in his eyes. Little girl, it's okay. The antidote is already being prepared. Gong Sun Shui smiled gently. High Priestess, let's stop lying to ourselves. Are you still going to hide it from me? The doctors still haven't found the cause of my illness, right? If they hadn't found it, how could they prepare the antidote? Lan Si was extremely shocked. You know everything? Gong Sun Shui nodded. 5 years ago, the medicine I took didn't have any effect. I summoned the doctors and interrogated them. Lan Si sighed heavily and smiled bitterly. I didn't think that you would also hide it from me. Why do we have to do this? It's for both of us to be at ease. Gongsun Shui replied softly. Lan Si looked at the little girl in front of him. His heart ached for her. Then the Sun Clan and the Moon Clan must have a leader. Sect Master, who is your candidate? Gongsun Shui comforted him. High Priestess, you don't have to worry. I already have a candidate. However, it's not the time to reveal it. I don't want to mess up the plan. She always had her own ideas. Lan Si didn't ask too much. However, he couldn't help but have a thought. Sect Master, have you thought about leaving a descendant? When the time comes, I can groom him. He can inherit your position in the future. You don't have to find someone else. Leave a descendant? Gongsun Shui was shocked. I think that second young Master Xiao's character and appearance are both top-notch. Sect Master, you can consider him. Have a child with that fool? Gongsun Shui instantly lost her ability to think. Chapter 1677. At this moment, Lan Si did not notice anything wrong with her expression and continued to spit. Sect Master, although that kid doesn't seem very reliable, after interacting with him he's a rare talent. Moreover, he's deeply in love with you, so you can treat his illness while nurturing the next generation with him. Even in the end, you'll still have a bloodline to carry on. Lan Si couldn't bear to say the last sentence too clearly. The Sect Master was right. They had been deceiving themselves for more than 10 years. Could they continue like this? Only by seeing the situation clearly could they make the best decision. Lan Si was no longer as excited as before. He looked at Gongsun Shui and said, Sect Master, the bloodline of the Gongsun family can't end in your generation. If you're worried about second young Master Xiao, you can leave the child with me. It'll inherit your talent and intelligence and will definitely be a wise ruler. Gongsun Shui finally calmed down. Hearing the high priest's words getting more and more ridiculous, she couldn't help but interrupt him. High priest, you don't have to worry about the continuation of the bloodline. The Gongsun family will have a descendant, but it won't be my child with Xiao Yao. Lan Si was stunned. Did the Sect Master already have a child without him knowing? He couldn't help but look at her lower abdomen. When did this happen? Who else could it be but Xiao Yao? The Sect Master moved so quickly and so stealthily. Gongsun Shui looked at the high priest's changing expression, and her face darkened. How could she not know what he was thinking? However, she didn't want to explain. It was good that there was a misunderstanding. Otherwise, he would nag about her and Xiao Yao in front of her again. Since there was no ending, there was no need to get involved with him. Perhaps because he thought that she already had a descendant in her belly, Lan Si didn't mention it anymore. He was afraid that she would be shy, so he didn't ask who the father of the child was. Anyway, the person who could catch the Sect Master's eye couldn't be bad. He just felt sorry for Xiao Yao. Why don't you take second young Master Xiao into the palace? Lan Si was very satisfied with his suggestion. Gongsun Shui was a little speechless. What kind of benefits did this idiot give them? Not only Qiu Feng and the others, but even the high priest was bribed by him. They were all praising him. It was really a headache. High Priestess, the situation is tense now. It's not the time to talk about romance. Let's get back to the main topic. She coughed lightly and changed the topic. The high priest felt a little wronged in his heart. Taking in a concubine and inheriting the royal family was also a big matter. Sect leader, what plans do you have? Didn't they say that Murong Yinxian was coming? Should we avoid it? Lan Si only now remembered that she had missed something. No need. I want to personally meet the invincible new sect master of the Ri clan. Lan Si thought that he had misheard and his eyebrows jumped. Sect master, you can't do that. When two armies fought, the commander-in-chief would always be at the rear. How could he charge and break through the enemy lines at the front? To put it bluntly, weren't they just sitting ducks? Gongsun Shui shook her head as if she had already made up her mind. High priest, I know what you want to say. You don't have to persuade me. I have my own plans. How could Lan Si agree to put herself in danger? Sect leader, you can't put yourself in danger. If there's anything you need, you can let this old one do it for you. This old one has lived for so long, and I'm not afraid of death. Gongsun Shui was a little touched. The high priest had doted on her since she was young. She had no parents, and he had let her experience the care and concern of an elder. It was a rare warmth in her life. She knew that if she didn't say anything, the high priest would definitely not let her go. In order to make sure that the plan went smoothly, she confessed some things. High priest, you also know that the Ri clan and Yu clan can't withstand the chaos of war. I don't want the country to be in ruins when North Korea is united. The purpose of our unification is to let the people live in peace and happiness. If our future happiness is built on their sacrifice, then their descendants won't be able to let it go. If the people complain, will the country still be the country? And will the family still be the family? Lan Si was touched by her words and listened attentively to what she had to say. She stood with her hands in front of her, and her gaze swept over the territory like a general who was giving instructions. She slowly said, "So, I want to use the simplest method to minimize the sacrifice to achieve our goal. This method is for the two leaders to sit down and use the world as a game of chess. They will play white and black chess pieces. The winner will be king, and the loser will be bandit. Whoever has the ability will be the ruler of the world." "You want to play a game?" Lan Si didn't expect her to have such a bold idea. He was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. This game was not a game of chess, and it wasn't really a game of chess. It was a war between kings, and it didn't involve the people. Gongsu and Xiao looked up at him and smiled. "High priest, do you trust me?" Lan Si looked into her eyes. He didn't know if it was because of Xiao Yao's appearance that this little girl who didn't like to smile could finally smile. He originally wanted to strictly reject her suggestion. When two kings fought, one of them would definitely be injured. It was hard to predict who would win, and no one could guarantee that they would win. However, when he saw her bright smile and full of confidence, as if everything was in her hands, Lan Si couldn't help but waver. This little girl rarely showed such a sharp side. Could it be that everything was in her hands? In the past, she had never made a mistake. Just like this time, she seemed to have known in advance that the Su family would fall, and had asked him to lead the troops here early. Lan Si's mind sank. In the battle for the throne, in addition to the military strength and manpower, the leader needed to devise strategies, and also a solitary courage. Only by seizing the opportunity could one climb to the top. In the end, he convinced himself and nodded. Since the sovereign has already decided, then this old man will do his best to support you. There is no objection. Thank you, High Priest. Gongsu and Xiao took a step back and bowed deeply to him. Thousands of words couldn't compare to the High Priest's indulgence towards her. Lan Si hurriedly helped her up. Sovereign, you are too serious. If there is anything you need, just tell me. This old man will help you arrange it. Lan Si left the room an hour later. Gongsu and Xiao remembered the trust in the High Priest's eyes and smiled bitterly. Although she didn't lie to the High Priest and everything she said was true, she did hide a part of the truth. That part was very important. She didn't lie, but she had hidden him into a misunderstanding. That idiot had said that sometimes, one's words, actions, and demeanor could confuse people. Therefore, the High Priest believed her without a doubt. Dumbo really knew how to scare people, but he wasn't wrong. Gongsu and Xiao turned to look outside the window. The leaves had all fallen, and only the bare branches were left. She lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. Withered trees would meet spring, flowers would bloom and wilt, and dynasties would change. It was only natural. However, she didn't know if she could wait until next year. She was so tired. She hoped that everything would end soon, and she would be free. Chapter 1678. Xiao Su was called to the study by Xiao Yao. Because the little fellow did not have a good appetite today, it took some time for him to coax her to eat. If not for Hualing telling him that there was something wrong with his second brother's expression, he would not want to leave the little fellow at all. When Xiao Su stepped into the study, he caught a glimpse of a dispirited person lying on the table with his back to him. He furrowed his brows without a trace. It had been a long time since Xiao Su had seen him so lifeless. As he thought of this, he quietly walked to the table and sat down. He asked, "What happened? Why do you look so dispirited?" Xiao Yao was in a daze. The sudden voice gave him a fright. He saw a black robe embroidered with auspicious clouds. He did not need to guess to know who it was. He continued to lie on the table and said in a muffled voice, "Imperial brother, the ice beauty said she won't leave." Xiao raised his brows. So it was about Gongsun Shui. Her people have already entered the residence. Who? Xiao looked up at him. Xiao looked at his confused and surprised eyes and sighed softly. Lan Si, her high priestess, and her trusted aide. Xiao's eyes widened. His lifeless eyes were filled with complex emotions. Then a self-deprecating smile appeared at the corner of his eyes. The navy blue robe made his skin look too white, as if it was colorless. His voice was very soft, but it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. I didn't know that she had hidden so many things from me. Xiao did not speak. Xiao slowly propped himself up. Instead of lying down, he propped his chin up with one hand. His black hair slid down along with his movements, and the fringe on his forehead covered his eyes. His true emotions couldn't be seen, but the disappointment that radiated from his body couldn't be ignored. Imperial brother. Xiao could not help but look at him. Xiao smiled, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. Why do you think she stayed here? She knew that Jean Xian was coming and she sent her trusted aide. She did not know that when the Japanese army arrived, she would not have enough manpower. She would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It would be better for her to return to the Yu clan and make plans. Even now, second brother was still worried about her safety. Even if she was injured, she still had to force a smile and let him help her analyze it. Brother, a person has 1,000 faces, and each face is different. People like Gongsun Shui are the hardest to figure out. If an emperor's mind can be easily guessed, then he will not be able to protect the country. Sometimes, it is not intentional, but it is not easy to figure out people's minds. You have been with her for so long, but you still can't figure it out, let alone me. Xiao told the truth. Xiao faintly sighed. He also understood this logic, but these days her attitude towards him was different from others. He thought that he treated her differently, but every time he had this kind of feeling, he would be quickly slapped in the face. Imperial brother, I've lived for so many years without knowing why. I thought I didn't have a heart, but ever since I met her, Chindi realized that there was still a heart beating in my chest. He chuckled bitterly. In the past, there were countless people who chased after me. I never believed in love. I didn't believe in promises. I thought it was good to be alone without any attachments. However, when I was caught in my own trap and chased after someone like those people who didn't care in the past, I realized that we can control our own lives, but we can't control the beating of our hearts. You and third brother are a happy family of 3. In the past, I didn't envy you, but now my views have changed. What can compare to a warm lamp waiting for you when you return? When you go out, she whispers in your ear. When you laugh, you have someone to keep you company. When you are down, you have someone to keep you company. When you are down, you have someone to keep you company. That person won't be like the rest of the world, who will praise you when you stand high and step on you when you fall. No one liked to wander around. It was just that they had not met a parasol tree that they could stop at. Xiao narrowed his eyes and looked at his second brother who was talking slowly. Are you done? Xiao widened his eyes and looked at him with sadness. But he was frightened by the sharpness in his eyes. He subconsciously shrank his neck. He wanted to say no, but when it reached his mouth, it became, I'm done. Xiao's voice was calm. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. You can be enlightened and have a yearning for a family. As your brother, I am very happy for you, but Xiao's curiosity was piqued by his words until he continued. But in my opinion, the yearning for a wife that you described just now does not match Gongsun at all. A warm lamp accompanying you and whispering to you. Is this really the Gongsun I know? Xiao's words mercilessly revealed the truth. Xiao imagined the ice beauty sitting at home, waiting for him to come back, smiling at him when he was warm, and giving him instructions in a soft voice. He chuckled. It was completely unimaginable. What Imperial brother said was the truth. He slammed the table. Seeing his second brother's cracked expression, Xiao's eyes flashed with a trace of a smile. But Xiao, who was immersed in his grief, did not notice. Don't pretend. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Xiao Yao's face stiffened. He hesitantly raised his head. Imperial brother, you know everything? Humph, you said so much just because you want me to protect her when they get into a conflict. Xiao Su finished speaking and glared at him. So unambitious. His sadness earlier was real, but compared to her safety, he was more concerned. Xiao Yao immediately smiled and stood up. He attentively massaged his brother's arms and asked fawningly, "Then Imperial brother, do you mean to help or not?" Xiao Su rolled his eyes at him. He really couldn't understand why he had such a fool who was still worried about counting money after being sold. Her snow-white slender fingers lightly tapped on the table, and the soft sound made Xiao Yao's heart beat with a thump-thump. What did Imperial brother mean by this? He didn't need to look to know that Xiao Yao's eyes were constantly darting around. Xiao Su didn't even look and knocked his head accurately. Xiao Yao yelped. He then heard his brother say, "Sister-in-law, of course I have to help." Xiao Yao instantly beamed. "I knew that Imperial brother is the best." Xiao Su snorted. After resolving the burden in his heart, Xiao Yao looked at him with a wronged and innocent expression. Xiao Su felt his hair stand on end from his gaze. He said unhappily, "What is it now?" "Imperial brother, this younger brother has a question. Back when you were pursuing Imperial sister-in-law, were you also plagued with misfortune?" Xiao Yao blinked and looked at him with his fingers. Xiao Su looked down at him with disdain. "Ayan and I were already engaged. Our past experiences were just seasonings before marriage. It's different from you." Xiao Yao stared blankly at his Imperial brother's departing figure. It took him a while to regain his senses. He was stuffed with dog food again. Imperial brother, bad man. However, after fuming for a while, he felt for the folding fan beside the table and gently opened it. The look in his eyes gradually faded, leaving only a bit of tenderness and persistence. If it was so easy to pursue the ice beauty, then she wouldn't be him. How could he give up on the person he had set his eyes on so easily? Just like what Imperial sister-in-law said, he had to be an unkillable cockroach. Although he didn't know who a cockroach was, he didn't care who it was. His words were crude, but his reasoning was not. He stood up and stretched. His lips curled into a carefree smile. He first went to eat something delicious to recharge his energy, then he prepared to continue his journey to melt the ice beauty. Chapter 1679. Gong Suanxue didn't know what Xiao Yao had done for her behind her back, nor did she know that she didn't chase him away, but instead encouraged him to walk towards her step by step. However, even if she knew at this moment, she wouldn't be able to reciprocate his sincerity. It would only add to her sadness. Qingyu entered the door and quickly reported, "Sovereign, the Japanese army will enter the city tomorrow." Gong Suanxue looked up from the book, her eyes as calm as a lake. "I know." Qingyu knew a little about her plan from the high priest. At this time, he had some thoughts in his mind, but his face showed hesitation, not knowing whether to speak or not. "Is there anything else?" Gong Suanxue looked at him in confusion. Qingyu gathered her courage and looked at her. "Sect master, it's too dangerous for you to stay here. You can leave the negotiations with the Japanese to someone you can trust. Right now your safety is the most important thing. If the Japanese are unwilling to negotiate with you, they will outnumber us. The situation will be very disadvantageous." Gong Suanxue shook her head and said firmly, "I can't do this. Even the high priest can't persuade me, so you don't have to persuade me. Just follow the plan." Qingyu opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he met her gaze he couldn't help but swallow his words. Yes, the sect master looked so weak, but in reality, she was a woman of her word. No one had ever been able to change her mind. As a subordinate, all he could do was to be loyal to his duty. This subordinate understands. Hearing the door close, Gong Suanxue put down the book in her hand and rubbed between her eyebrows. They had only seen the tip of the iceberg of her plan, and they could not bear it. If everything was revealed to the world, how would they react? But by then everything would be settled, and it would not be up to them to decide. Qingyu and the others were all brought up by her. She must use the remaining time to plan the future for them, so that their loyalty to her for more than 10 years would not be in vain. Just as she was deep in thought, An unexpected guest came to Xiao Yao's courtyard. Why was it an accident? Because Xiao Yao would never have guessed that this person would come looking for him. The high priest's presence really makes me feel flattered. Xiao Yao stood up and greeted him warmly. This person was the Ice Beauty's favorite. He couldn't offend him. Yes, he had to curry favor with him. Come sit. This is Yuqian Longjing. High priest, try it. This is a few desserts specially made by the chef. High priest, try it. As soon as Lan Si entered the door, Xiao Yao's words made him dizzy. He waved his hand and pushed the plate Xiao Yao. To get Xiao Yao's right. And is. Teet. Of. There's no need to be so courteous. This old man is tired. Hearing his words, Xiao Yao turned around and saw that he didn't seem to be joking. His upright posture immediately collapsed and he returned to his original state. He lazily leaned against the back of the chair and said with a smile, High priest, since you said so, it means that you treat me as one of your own. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony. High priest, feel free to order whatever you want to eat or drink. Just treat this place as your own. If he didn't treat him as part of the Ice Beauty's family, Xiao Yao wouldn't be so courteous. In his life, there was no such word before. The high priest saw that he didn't know how to sit properly. The corners of his eyes twitched. Forget it, he was used to him being so straightforward. It was comfortable to talk to him. This old man came to find you because I have something to ask for your help. Oh, what is it that the high priest can't solve and needs my help? Xiao Yao chuckled. He looked like he was taking pleasure in the high priest's misfortune. The high priest glared at him. It's about the sect leader. With that, he successfully saw Xiao Yao turn serious. The high priest nodded in his heart. He didn't misjudge this kid. He treated the sect leader with sincerity. Xiao Yao immediately asked, What's wrong with the Ice Beauty? The high priest sighed. Qiu Feng told me today that the sect leader hasn't eaten much these 2 days. She hasn't touched her chopsticks at all. This old man is very worried. This has never happened before. I don't know if the sect leader... Before he finished speaking, there was only a teacup left in front of him. Smoke rose in spirals. The high priest stroked his beard and smiled. He could go back with peace of mind. In the room, Gong Suanxue looked at Xiao Yao who suddenly appeared in front of her. She blinked, thinking that she was hallucinating. After confirming that the person who was waiting for her with deep hatred was indeed Xiao Yao, she couldn't help but put on a stern face. Didn't I tell you before? Even if you have something to do, you have to leave through the door. Don't go through the window. It's faster to go through the window. What if you don't open the door for me? Wouldn't I be wasting my time? Xiao Yao said righteously. Gong Suanxue was rendered speechless by his twisted logic. Then what are you doing here? She thought that after that day, he would never treat her as a friend again. Before Xiao Yao could answer, there was a knock on the door. Qiu Feng's voice sounded. Gong Suanxue glanced at Xiao Yao and let her in. Qiu Feng came in, followed by 2 maids who were carrying dishes. After the table was filled with dishes, Qiu Feng tactfully retreated. Only she and Xiao Yao were left in the room. Explain. She glanced at the person in front of her who was scooping soup for himself. Xiao Yao snorted. I haven't eaten anything for a day. You have to eat with me. She didn't ask why he didn't eat, because she already knew the answer when she saw him ladle a full bowl of food for her. Since he wanted to let her eat, then she would let him have his way. The 2 of them didn't speak and quietly finished the meal. Xiao Yao realized that every time he gave her food, she didn't reject it. He was very satisfied. However, the Ice Beauty's obedience today was just too surprising. When he put down his chopsticks, Xiao Yao wanted to praise her, but Huo Ling appeared. He said that his royal brother was looking for him. He didn't even think about it as he warned the Ice Beauty before quickly leaving. After he left, the blush on Gong Suanxue's face that she was using her internal strength to hold back disappeared like water, leaving her pale white. Woo! Qiu Feng listened to Xiao Yao's orders and came in to take away the dishes. However, she saw her sect master holding onto the table and spitting out a mouthful of blood. She cried out in shock, Sect master. Gong Suanxue sharply looked up at her. Don't make a sound. Xiaofeng had never seen this kind of sect master before, so she immediately closed her mouth. At this time, Qingyu's voice came from outside the door. Gong Xuanxue's eyes turned cold as she ordered, "Clean it up." The meaning was to not let Qingyu know. Xiaofeng was very anxious, but she still obeyed. When the door opened, Qingyu looked up. She never thought that the sect master would personally open the door. She was stunned at first before immediately reporting, "Sect master, Murong Yunxian entered the city early. He should be in the palace now." Gong Xuanxue revealed a faint smile. "He's here? It was good to be a bit early. We'll go meet him later." Chapter 1680. Jin Xian's early arrival in the city was a pleasant surprise for everyone. Chu Qingyan immediately headed for the door when she heard the news. If Xiaosu hadn't stopped her, she would have squeezed her way to the door. Xiaosu's head hurt. With her agility, he couldn't tell that she was pregnant at all. "He'll be here soon. You'll see him sooner or later. There are too many people now, so you should stop for a while." Xiaosu pretended to be cold to scare her. However, pregnant women were the most important. Chu Qingyan was pregnant now, and not only was her belly growing, her temper was also growing. She said angrily, "I'll just go to the door. It's not a problem. Don't be so overbearing." He kept her restrained all day and couldn't let her go anywhere. She was so bored that grass was about to grow on her head. Under the silver mask, a hint of helplessness flashed across his inky eyes. He raised his hand to caress her face and coaxed softly, "When you give birth to the child, I'll accompany you wherever you want to go." This was the second child. With the experience of the first child, he could deal with the little fellow's temper with ease. As expected, Chu Qingyan stopped when she heard this. She rubbed against his palm. "I also want to eat all the delicacies in the world." Looking at his wife who was like a lazy kitten, Xiaosu curved his lips. "As you wish." Chu Qingyan had just opened her mouth when she heard a discordant voice cut in. "Yo yo yo. What kind of scandal is this in broad daylight in front of so many people?" Xiao Yao waved the fan in his hand as he leisurely flashed in. However, the fan in his hand blocked his face, revealing a pair of mischievous peach blossom eyes as he looked them up and down. His royal brother and sister-in-law were always showing off their affection. They should at least consider the feelings of the single people like them. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and fanned the air. She turned to ask the person beside her, "Big Ice Cube, do you smell something sour coming from somewhere?" Xiaosu saw her winking at him, and he couldn't help but smile. He said cooperatively, "Indeed, someone probably can't eat grapes and is jealous of grapes." Xiao Yao twisted the paper fan in his hand. His face was filled with grief and indignation, but his heart was filled with tears. It was one thing for these two to spread dog food, but they were even bullying him. Once he got the beauty back, he would definitely turn the tables in front of them. At this time, Hualing strode in with a rare look of joy on his face. "Master, little princess, Jin Xian and Mu Ling have returned. They've already entered the door." With that said, before Chu Qingyan could even smile, Hualing's figure flashed, revealing the high-spirited person behind him. "Master, your subordinate has returned." The cold voice could not hide the joy and excitement in it. A man dressed in black appeared in everyone's line of sight. He had a lean body, a knife-like appearance, and an increasingly calm temperament. Who else could it be but Jin Xian? He didn't wait for Chu Qingyan to stand up as he walked in front of her in 3 steps. He knelt down with his hands clasped in front of him, and his eyes were red with excitement. "Master, your subordinate has returned." It was the same sentence, but it was filled with different emotions. However, Chu Qingyan received this affection. She stood up and supported her waist as she walked in front of him. Looking at his thin but spirited appearance, she was moved and proud. She wanted to praise him for his achievements in the past year. But when the words came out of her mouth, they were choked with sobs. "You've become thinner and darker." Jin Xian smiled when he heard this. "Didn't you always say that a man shouldn't be so white? It's not like I'm a girl. Isn't this subordinate following your teachings?" Chu Qingyan glared at him with a smile. "As expected, you're different after seeing the world. You even know how to talk back." Jin Xian quickly said, I don't dare. Alright, I'm just joking with you. Hurry and get up. You're already the leader of a clan. How could you be seen like this by others? Chu Qingyan wanted to reach out to help him up, but Jin Xian saw her bulging belly and his highness glaring at her from the side. How could he dare trouble his master? So he stood up on his own. Seeing him take 2 steps back and stand still in fear, Chu Qingyan couldn't help glaring at the person beside her. This vinegar jar. At this time, she heard Jin Xian speak. Master, this subordinate is only temporarily managing the Ri clan. I don't really want to stay here. Also, no matter what this subordinate's identity is, you are this subordinate's master. No matter what happens, this is an eternal fact. Therefore, this subordinate should kneel to you. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened when she heard this. Looking at the resolute person in front of her, she couldn't help but think of the first time they met more than 10 years ago. She didn't expect that a fire would strengthen their relationship. When Ji Linyang and the others entered the door, they heard Jin Xian's words and couldn't help but nod. This person was loyal and righteous. When he was in trouble, he was humble. When he was proud, he was humble. When he was proud, he was humble. Xiao Su went forward to hug his little wife. When he saw that her eyes were red because of Jin Xian, he was a little unhappy. However, he still gave her a seat and asked, "Why did you enter the city early?" Jin Xian sat down and replied, "The army has already arrived outside the city. This subordinate and Xining miss master very much, so we entered the city first. As for the soldiers, this subordinate doesn't have to worry about them. I forgot because I was too happy. Where is Xining?" Chu Qingyan looked outside the door and didn't see anyone. She was a little suspicious. Jin Xian revealed a smile. This subordinate rode a horse. She sat in a carriage. She was slower than this subordinate, but I think she will be here soon. Speak of the devil. A clear voice sounded from outside the door. Master, this servant is back. Everyone smiled. If they weren't family, they would enter the same house. These two even said the same thing when they came back. They had such tacit understanding. Xining was wearing a lake blue brocade robe. There was a circle of fox fur around her neck and a well-made cloak. There were 2 servant girls following behind her. She looked like the mother of a clan. She didn't have the timid appearance she had when she was in the King of England's residence. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Sure enough, clothes made the man. Xining's outfit showed off all her good points. She held her head high and her chest out. Her temperament didn't lose to that of a young lady from a noble family. Her years of careful training had not been in vain. Now it was showing. From the corner of her eyes, she saw that Jin Xian was looking at Xining without blinking. He couldn't hide the affection in his eyes. She secretly laughed in her heart. It was obvious that these 2 people had already achieved a positive result. Xining threw herself in front of her and hugged her waist. She looked at her with teary eyes and felt wronged. Master, Xining missed you so much. I also miss little master. I also missed you so much. I'm not used to not having you by my side. But it's good that you're back. It's been hard on you. Chu Qingyan was also a little choked up. She touched her face and saw that she had grown a lot taller. Her facial features had also become more beautiful. Her heart was very comforted. It was the feeling of having a little sister who had just grown up. Mu Ling also arrived later. Turin had arrived a day earlier than them. At this time, Hualing, Ethereal, and the others had gathered with them. They were talking about what they had seen and heard along the way. The retired emperor also came in after hearing the news. When these living treasures met, the atmosphere immediately became lively. Chapter 1681. Jin Xian looked at this joyous and harmonious scene, and his heart was filled with emotion. From the front lines where the flames of war raged, the schemes of mutual deception, and the hypocritical exchanges, he once again felt the sincerity of affection. Only by being by his master's side could he feel the warmth of a home. During this period of time, he had met quite a number of members of the Murong clan's branch families. They used their status to flatter him, and they dared to say anything against their will. They only wanted to get some benefits from him. Did they really think that he had forgotten how they had bullied and humiliated him after so many years? Although they were related by blood, They were not as good as the people around him who were sincerely thinking about him. Just as Jean Xian was immersed in this long-lost warmth, he heard His Highness's question. "How is the war?" Xiao Su peeled an orange and placed it in the little fellow's hand as he asked casually. Jean Xian's expression immediately became serious. The Ri clan has basically recovered and sent people to take over. A portion of the army has been sent to build cities and settle the people. Because the Ri clan has been ruled for nearly 10 years, the people are afraid of being bullied by the Yu clan. It will take some time for them to return to their former prosperity. We originally did not send troops to the Yu clan so quickly, but we did not expect the Su clan to be impatient and launch a sneak attack first. This subordinate discussed with Turin and the others to pursue the victory. However, the Su clan is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. In addition, we have the advantage of time, place, and people. After fighting for nearly a month, we defeated them. Now that the army has entered the Yu clan's territory, they have begun to recruit the soldiers under the Su clan. I believe that in less than a month, we will be able to annex the cities in Su Yu's hands. However, it is a pity that this subordinate was not able to capture Su Yu personally and let them escape. However, this subordinate has already sent people to pursue them. As long as they are still in North Korea, I do not believe that they will not be caught. On the way here, he had already heard about what happened to Gong Sunfei and Feng Ling. He did not have a good impression of the Su clan. If it were not for them, his master would not have to run around while carrying a child. When he returned, he would increase the search efforts and capture these people as soon as possible. And Jean Xian was also a protective person. Well, other than that, what do you plan to do next? Xiao Su continued to ask. Now that the little fellow was here, if they were to continue fighting, he had to make plans early. He had to bring the little fellow and his family to a safe place to avoid being affected. Xiao Yao was sitting at the side. When he heard this, he immediately sat up straight and stared at Jean Xian. This was what he wanted to know as well. Jean Xian had a difficult expression on his face when he was asked this question. However, he did not avoid it. Everyone present was someone he could trust, so he told them about the differences between him and his followers. This subordinate originally wanted to take back the territory, because I couldn't stand the people of the Yu clan acting tyrannically in the Ri clan's territory and harming the people. It was also for the sake of mother and master's expectations. After taking back the territory, this subordinate planned to use the strength of the two clans to contend against each other to force the current clan leader of the Yu clan to hand over the murderer, who framed the Morong clan. However, this subordinate didn't expect the Su clan to take the initiative to provoke them. Not only did they cross the boundary, but they also occupied the Yu clan's territory. However, he already knew about the internal strife of the Yu clan, so he did not communicate with the clan leader of the Yu clan, and directly crossed the boundary. However, what made him very confused was that this time, the battle with the Yu clan had been won very smoothly. It was so smooth that he could not believe it. It was as if someone had secretly helped him, but no matter how he investigated, he could not find out who it was. However, now it is difficult to stop halfway. My subordinates want to directly lead the army into the Yu clan's capital, but this subordinate does not want to fight anymore. It is a pity that after sitting in this position, I realized that there are many things that I can't do. Although he was the person in charge and most of the time, when it came to the grievances between the Ri clan and the Yu clan, the Ri clan's generals all said that they wanted the Yu clan to pay the blood debt in blood. Even if he knew that the matter back then had nothing to do with the current clan leader. This was the voice of the people. It was difficult to control the voice of the people. This was the advantage of talking to smart people. Xiao Su only asked one question, and Jean Xian already knew what he wanted to know. He told him the most important thing. Most of the people present were used to scheming and plotting, and could understand Jean Xian's dilemma. The person in charge could not do as he pleased at all times. The people were like water, and the emperor and his officials were like boats. Water could carry the boat, but it could also capsize the boat. They had seen too many Yu clan soldiers harm the Ri clan's people all the way from the Ri clan. Their actions were infuriating, so now that a son like Jean Xian had appeared to illuminate their future. How could they let go of the enemy who had caused them so much pain all these years? Naturally, they would pursue the victory. They did not care if the person who had ordered the attack was the current clan leader. If the person was blinded by hatred, as long as they were related to the Yu clan, they would not let them go easily. However, Chu Qingyan and the others knew that Gongsun Shui had only been in power for the past few years. She could barely manage the Yu clan's affairs. As for the Ri clan, they were far away and were controlled by the Su clan. Gongsun Shui could not interfere at all. She was innocent in the hatred between the Sun clan and the Yu clan. It was because of this that Xiao Yao could not sit still. He closed his fan and looked at Jin Xian seriously. Jin Xian, now that you have taken over half of the Yu clan's territory, and the Yu clan has paid the price for the mistakes they have made over the years, can you not send troops to the capital city? Ice Beauty, no, I mean clan leader Yu. She is also a victim of this disaster. Many times she had no choice. Didn't you say that you wanted to find the person who ordered the massacre of your clan? If you find the culprit, I hope that you can let her go. Jin Xian was a little surprised that Xiao Yao would speak up for clan leader Yu. However, looking at everyone's expressions, they did not seem surprised. It seemed to be within reason. Could it be that something had happened during this time? Because Jin Xian was at the front lines, he naturally did not know about Xiao Yao and Gongsun Shui. Chu Qingyan looked at the solemn Xiao Yao and sighed softly in her heart. Then she said to Jin Xian, "That clan leader Yu became friends with us by accident. She is now living in this residence." What? She was here? Jin Xian was shocked. Before he could react, there was a commotion outside the door. Then a group of people walked in. The person in the lead was dressed in a snow-white brocade robe. Her sleeves and skirt were embroidered with large blooming national flowers using blue silk thread. Apart from this, there were no other decorations. Her sleeves were of the same color, and she exuded a noble and dignified aura. She wore boots of the same color, and her hair was tied up with a golden jade crown. 2 strands of black hair fell beside her cheeks. Her facial features were exquisite, and her eyes were black. They were naturally cold. Clan leader Yu has arrived. A loud voice announced. Chapter 1682. The person who suddenly appeared in the hall could only be described with one word. Handsome. At first glance, no one recognized that this person was Gongsun Shui. If not for her loud voice, they would have thought that she was a handsome young master. This was the first time Xiao Yao saw her in men's clothing. She was so handsome. Seeing everyone's stunned eyes, he put away his infatuated face and felt proud. She was indeed the person he liked. But soon, he realized that something was wrong. Wait, Jin Xian just came back, and she came to find him. What was the Ice Beauty trying to do? Not only was Xiao Yao surprised, Chu Qingyan and the others were also confused. Wasn't Gongsun Shui taking the initiative to walk into the muzzle of the gun? Gongsun Shui had already expected everyone's reaction. She didn't look at Xiao Yao, who was trying to signal her. She nodded to Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su. Then her eyes wandered around the crowd. She asked calmly, "May I ask which one of you is Sect Master Morong Yinxian?" As soon as she finished speaking, everyone's expression changed. Thinking of her current status, could it be that she couldn't hold back and wanted to directly confront Jin Xian? Xiao Yao heard this and immediately looked to his brother for help. The latter rolled his eyes. If Gongsun Shui wanted to die, he might not be able to stop her. Jin Xian was not a fool. He could clearly feel everyone's reaction. He thought that Sect Master Yue must be a very important friend to his master. He couldn't help but stand up and salute her. He replied in a neither intimate nor cold manner. "This one is Sect Master Yue, but I am not the Sect Master of the Sun Clan. I am only temporarily managing the affairs. This one and Sect Master Yue have never met before. What business does Sect Master Yue have with this one?" In fact, when Gongsun Shui opened her mouth to ask, she saw Jin Xian sitting in the crowd. This man had an outstanding temperament and was handsome. Most importantly, his appearance was very similar to an old friend. When he admitted it himself, her suspicions were confirmed. If someone didn't know, seeing this scene, Gongsun Shui's politeness and Jin Xian's decent response, They would think that it was a friendly first meeting, and that they were asking each other about their identities. However, those who knew what was going on were all worried. They didn't know what Gongsun Shui was going to do next. Although Jin Xian had only brought a few of his trusted aides into the city, if Jin Xian's people wanted to attack him, Chu Qingyan would be the first to object and protect him to the end. However, if Jin Xian wanted to attack Gongsun Shui, Xiao Yao would not just stand by and watch. Therefore, no matter which side was going to make a move, it was not a situation they wanted to see. However, the grudge between the Sun-Moon race and the Sun-Moon race was something that outsiders like them couldn't interfere with. They could only wait and see. They could only plan for the worst-case scenario, so that a fight wouldn't break out. The atmosphere was very strange. Unexpectedly, Gongsun Shui began to observe Jin Xian carefully. It did not seem like she was trying to figure out an opponent. Even though Jin Xian was able to command an army of thousands, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine. This person had come and observed him without saying a word. What was she trying to do? After a moment of silence, Gongsun Shui broke the awkward atmosphere. Although you are only temporarily in charge of military affairs, I still call you Sect Master Morong. Jin Xian did not mind. Gongsun Shui was very satisfied with his attitude. She was looking forward to what was going to happen next. Sect Master Morong, the Sun-Moon race's army is already outside Luocheng. Luocheng is 7 cities away from the capital city, but I believe that with your strength, you will be able to reach the city in less than 3 months. I am not saying this because our army is weak, but because your army's morale is high, and our army is not strong enough. It is only a matter of time before we lose the war. However, I believe that Sect Master Morong is a person who loves the people as much as his own children. You have been restraining your soldiers all the way here, and you have not taken a single needle or a piece of thread from the people. What is Sect Master Gongsun Shui trying to say? When Jin Xian heard her words, it was as if she was denying their side and affirming the other side. How could this kind of words that boosted the morale of others without diminishing their own prestige appear from the head of a sect? Jin Xian didn't understand, but he still looked at her calmly on the surface. As soon as Gongsun Shui spoke, Chu Qingyan and the others knew that they had become outsiders and could not interfere. So they sat aside and watched quietly. It's very simple. In ancient times, when 2 armies fought, in order to avoid hurting the innocent, the commander would go out and fight. I think we can do the same. No one had expected Gongsun Shui to say such a heavy hammer so casually. For a moment, no one could react. Xiao Yao was the first to recover. He said angrily, "What are you doing? Do you want to fight with Jin Xian? Why are you so impulsive?" Gongsun Shui shook her head at him, indicating that he should not speak. Xiao Yao could not suppress the worry and anger in his chest. Just as he was about to stand up, he was stopped by an outstretched hand. He turned his head and met his brother's eyes, indicating that he should not be rash. Let's see what she plans to do. Since his brother had spoken, there should not be any problems. Only then did Xiao Yao reluctantly sit down. Gongsun Shui looked at Xiao Su gratefully. If this fool had made a scene, he would have disrupted her plans. Fortunately, his brother was able to suppress him. Jin Xian looked at everyone's expressions and thought for a moment. Then he said, "Sect Master Gongsun, why are you so confident that I will agree? Just as you said, your army is no match for us. Our army will be able to invade your capital sooner or later. Why should we fight with you? To put it bluntly, if I lose, won't I lose this great opportunity to unify the 2 races? So why don't Sect Master Gongsun return to your Moon Clan? We will meet again on the battlefield." Xiao Yao could tell that Jin Xian was giving the Ice Beauty a way out, and allowing her to return to the Moon Clan. He could not wait to agree on behalf of the Ice Beauty. However, if he had this intention, Gongsun Shui would not have appeared here. It seemed like this person was taking into account her relationship with the Xiao family. That was why he was giving her face. Unfortunately, she had already prepared everything. How could she return empty-handed? She shook her head at Jin Xian and said, "That is not the case. This suggestion is the best solution for both you and the Sun-Moon race. Although I said that we do not have enough military strength, You have forgotten one thing. If we are determined to fight to the death, it will not be so easy for you to invade our city. Furthermore, humans can conquer nature. Our Moon Clan has many smart and brave generals. If we work together and are familiar with the terrain, it is not impossible for us to win against you. So, under the premise that we do not harm the civilians and cause more casualties, this is the only way. This is not my stalling tactic, nor am I trying to scheme against you. You should have seen the damage that war can do to a country. As the leaders of both sides, the first thing we have to consider is the people's livelihood, not hatred. So, are you willing to accept the challenge? Chapter 1683. Gong Xuanxue's words shocked everyone, but they weren't without reason. Jin Xian lowered his head and thought for a moment, then turned to look at his master. Chu Qingyan received his inquiring gaze and smiled. You are now the leader of the Japanese. You can decide what you want to do and what you want to do. No matter what, I will support you. Jin Xian nodded obediently. Gong Xuanxue saw the interaction between the two and couldn't help but be a little surprised. Why does it seem like Morong Yinxian always listens to Chu Qingyan? It was only then that she noticed the arrangement of their seats. Even though he was the sect lord of the Sun race, he was only seated below Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. Furthermore, he wasn't even in a position of honor. Could it be that the sect lord of the Sun race's status wasn't the highest among them? Only then did she re-examine the status of Xiao Su and the others. Did she overlook something? But before Gong Xuanxue could think about it, Jin Xian had already given a reply. He looked at Gong Xuanxue with bright eyes and replied in a steady and powerful voice. Sect leader Gong Xuanxue is right. The reason why this humble one decided to revolt was because I saw the people being persecuted, and their lives were not guaranteed. Now that sect leader Gong Xuanxue thinks this way, we coincide. If we can use the simplest method to reduce the casualties and solve the problem, why not? But what does sect leader Gong Xuanxue want to do? Jin Xian's words showed that he accepted the challenge. Gong Xuanxue was very satisfied that he could think this way. She thought it would take some time to convince him, but this was just right. His personality was to her liking. Because of Jin Xian's words, everyone's eyes fell on Gong Xuanxue. If it could avoid a war between the two armies, Gong Xuanxue's method could be considered the best. But it was a little surprising that Gong Xuanxue proposed it. If she didn't have full confidence, she would be courting death. Gong Xuanxue smiled faintly. I am very happy that sect leader Morong can accept. Then let's decide the winner of 2 out of 3 rounds. We will each choose a topic, and the third one will be decided by drawing lots. How about it? Sure. The competition that we propose is a chess battle. It's like selecting soldiers to fight on the battlefield. The world is the game, and the soldiers are the chess pieces. How about it? No problem. Jin Xian nodded. After pondering for a while, he said, the second round can be a combat test. How about we each pick a general to represent us and decide who is better? Because the other party was a woman, Jin Xian didn't want to bully the weak, but he also didn't want to make a move on a woman. Therefore, the compromise was to send representatives from each sect. However, Gong Xuanxue unexpectedly made a suggestion. We have no problem with the martial arts test, but I think it would be better if the two of us were to fight. I have been practicing martial arts since I was a child, and I don't think I'm bad. However, the people around me have never really fought with me because of my identity. I heard that Lord Morong's martial arts is very strong, so I would like to exchange some pointers with you. I wonder if Lord Morong could fulfill my small request? As soon as he said this, Xiao panicked. Imperial brother, can you stop this duel? Why do I feel like the Ice Beauty is digging a hole for herself? He didn't know the level of the Ice Beauty's martial arts, but he had experienced Jin Xian's martial arts before. Even he could only fight him to a draw. He was trained by Imperial sister-in-law and the fierce cavalry, plus Imperial brother's guidance. How bad could he be? In the fierce cavalry, except for Turin and the other cavalry masters, there were not many who had the confidence to beat him. In fact, it wasn't only Xiao who was shocked. Even Qingyu Qiutong and the others behind Gong Xuanxue were stunned. The sect master had never discussed the details of the duel with them. They didn't expect her to put herself in danger. However, they couldn't say anything because before they came here, the sect master had already ordered them to keep their mouths shut. No matter what happened, they couldn't disobey any of her decisions. Therefore, they could only keep their mouths shut and nervously speculate about the sect master's intentions. Xiao looked at him coldly. She is the sect master. A monarch's words are not to be taken lightly. In front of so many people, do you think she can go back on her words? Heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. Xiao felt that his second brother was like this. He looked at the person standing in the middle of the hall like a shining pearl, and sighed softly in his heart. Who asked this idiot to take a fancy to the most beautiful jade in the world? Xiao was stunned. Yes, she was the sect master. How could she go back on her words so easily? Unless Jin Xian didn't agree. His eyes lit up and he was about to speak, but Gong Xuanxue, who was already on guard against him, immediately looked over. Her usually calm eyes flashed with a hint of pleading, asking him not to interfere. At this moment, Xiao seemed to understand a lot of the meaning in her eyes and was stunned. It was also in this moment that Jin Xian gave his answer. I don't think it's appropriate. The difference in strength between men and women is too great. It's unfair to you. Hearing this, Xiao sighed in relief. Jin Xian was a good kid. He decided not to tease him in the future. However, Gong Xuanxue didn't appreciate it. Her tone was solemn. Is Sect Master Morong looking down on women? I don't mean that. Since that's the case, I'll agree to this suggestion. As a woman, I am also the Sect Master of the Tranquil Moon Sect. On the battlefield, no one will show mercy to you just because you are a man or a woman. The path of power has always been so fair. Whoever is strong will rise to the top. It is that simple. Since Gong Xuanxue had already said so, Jin Xian had no way out and could only agree. Since it's a best of 3, I might have won the first 2 rounds. There's no need for the third round, so let's leave the last round for last. The time is set to 2 days later. Does Sect Master Morong have any objections? When Gong Xuanxue finished speaking, Xining muttered softly, this Sect Master is so conceited. Who says she'll definitely win? Chu Qingyan heard Xining's muttering and couldn't help but frown as she looked at Gong Xuanxue. Her actions today were completely different from the cold indifference she displayed before. It was as if she had grown edges, sharp and sharp. Could this be her true self? Or, it was also the first time Jin Xian met such a boastful girl. However, he never cared about such things. Master said before that the process wasn't important. What was important was the result. There was no need to argue. He agreed without hesitation. All right, let's set it 2 days later. Gong Xuanxue admired his straightforwardness and nodded. Then I won't disturb your time to reminisce. I'll take my leave first. She nodded to Chu Qingyan and the rest, then led them out of the hall. Qingyu finally couldn't hold it in. Sect Master, does the High Priest know what you're doing? Gong Xuanxue raised her hand to stop him from continuing. We'll talk when we get back. Just then, a clear and hurried voice sounded. Ice Beauty, stop right there. She sighed softly. She knew that he wouldn't let her off easily. Chapter 1684. Just as she turned around, Xiao had already appeared behind her. Ignoring the gazes of others, he reached out and grabbed her shoulder, pulling her close to his eyes. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. What are you thinking? What are you thinking at this time? Isn't it more important to protect yourself? Why are you so impulsive? Does the High Priest agree with you? Usually, you are the most reassuring. Why are you so worrisome at this critical moment? If you regret it now, I will help you talk to Jin Xian. Gong Xuanxue was tightly held in front of his eyes. Hearing him speak through gritted teeth, it was not difficult to hear the worry in his anxious tone. She did not let him continue. Xiao. This clear and pleasant voice made Xiao instantly stop talking. He rarely heard her call his name in such a gentle manner, and he was somewhat flattered. When Qingyu and the others saw Xiao holding their master hostage, they subconsciously wanted to go forward to protect him. But when they saw the sudden change in the atmosphere, They all stopped. They looked at each other and retreated, leaving the two of them some space, standing in the distance to protect them. Do you believe me? Bathed in the light of the late winter sun. The blue flowers on her snow-white robe flowed with light under the sunlight, as if they were alive. Her gaze was gentle and her expression was calm as she slowly spoke. The word believe, Xiao almost blurted out. But when he thought of the hole she had dug for him, he immediately stopped and looked at her with a puzzled gaze. I really want to believe you, but how can I believe you? I have never guessed your thoughts and you have never believed me. Ice Beauty, is it really that difficult to be honest with me? She heard his confusion and hurt, but she could not be soft-hearted at this moment. She hid many things in her heart, but she could not say them to outsiders. She suppressed the emotions in her heart. Her gaze was as deep as a lake as she said word by word. Xiao, believe me, I will not lose. The peace of the Moon Clan is what I have always hoped for. I am not impulsive, nor am I being impulsive. I have my own ideas. The person in front of him was confident and beautiful, emitting a convincing light. Xiao hesitated for a moment before finally saying with difficulty, Okay, I believe you. He just did not want her to be in danger. It had nothing to do with trust. But when she so earnestly wished that he would believe her, her resolve faltered. This was the girl he had always protected. How could he bear to make her unhappy? Her tone was so firm. Perhaps she had really thought it through carefully before coming to this decision. Since that was the case, he would support her to the end. Sigh, I haven't even managed to woo her, but I'm already indulging her. Is this really good? Thank you. Gong Sunshui raised her head and smiled at him. Xiao was stunned, as if a spring breeze had come and thousands of pear trees had bloomed. Xiao's heart echoed. This was really good. At this moment, Gong Sunshui took a few steps back and put some distance between them. She smiled and said, I have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Xiao was still immersed in her smile just now. He didn't react until she was far away. He couldn't help but be angry at himself for being so easily bewitched. But to be honest, the Ice Beauty's smile was really beautiful. He rubbed his chin. It wasn't good for him to chase after them, so he could only walk back. However, not long after, he finally understood the meaning of her words today, and his heart ached. Inside the hall, after Gong Sunshui left, the atmosphere was much more relaxed, but it was more or less affected by what happened just now. Mu Ling was straightforward and asked directly, Why is Sect Master Gongsun in the residence? Hu Ling didn't hide anything. He told Jin Xian and the others about how he saved Gong Sunshui, as well as how she mobilized troops to save Feng Ling. All in all, this is fate and favor that can't be severed. Turin teased, I haven't seen you for a few days, but your phrasing has improved quite a bit. Hu Ling raised his little tail. Of course, it's never too late to learn. The atmosphere was livened up by these few words. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. The more the merrier. Now that they were back, there was a lot more fun. She glanced at Jin Xian's expression from the corner of her eye. She thought for a moment and said, Still thinking about Miss Gongsun? Jin Xian nodded. From what Hu Ling said just now, this subordinate doesn't quite understand. Why did she personally come to Luoqing to help find Feng Ling? She could have just sent someone over. When she entered the city, Siyu had yet to lose his power. As a sect master, it wasn't a wise move for her to enter a dangerous place. Moreover, she gave this subordinate the wrong impression that she was here specifically to wait for this subordinate. Jin Xian had only met her once, and he already had so many doubts. Wasn't she the same? Gong Sunshui's appearance in Luoqing this time was very suspicious. In addition, she suddenly declared war this time. It was completely different from her usual style, and it made people feel uneasy. However, Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and said, This sect master Gongsun is a reasonable person. I believe that she has her own reasons for doing this. Moreover, weren't you thinking about how to deal with the Japanese people? Don't you have a ready-made solution now? You don't need to use force to solve this problem. And you can answer to the people. No matter if you win or lose, no one will dare to use the enmity between the two clans to pressure you, right? Jin Xian felt that his master's words made sense, and said obediently, Master is right. No matter the result, this subordinate will benefit no matter what. It's good that you can think that way. Tu Qingyan laughed heartily. Everyone else also expressed that this was a problem between the Sun and Moon clans. As outsiders, it was not appropriate for them to interfere. Moreover, they were friends with Gongsun Shui, and she was Xiao Yao's sweetheart, so everyone tacitly chose to watch from the sidelines. Because Jin Xian was also one of them, and they were both flesh and blood. Let them fight among themselves. At most, they would come and clean up the mess in the end. Aside from the interlude just now, Jin Xian could talk about official matters, but other than that, he could not say a single word. Therefore, Xining took over the initiative. She had always been a chatterbox, and now that they had reunited, she was already full of things to say. Therefore, everyone listened attentively, and listened to her talk about the things that had happened in the past year. Interesting, thrilling, just like a storyteller. Although they had been exchanging letters these days, these people only reported the good news and not the bad news. When they encountered danger, they would only mention it casually. Now that they were listening to Xining's narration, they felt as if they were in the same situation. Although they had won one battle after another, only they knew how hard it had been. The world only saw you wearing fancy clothes and holding high authority, but they did not know how difficult it had been for you to overcome all obstacles. Tu Qingyan's heart ached for Jin Xian and the others. After Xining finished, she urged them to go and rest. After everyone went back to their rooms, Tu Qingyan walked in front of them with her head lowered. She was not aware that someone behind her hugged her tightly. Big Ice Cube was becoming more and more fond of sneaking up on her. Before she could say anything, she heard him say in a gloomy and displeased tone, "I've fought so many battles, but I don't see you feeling sorry for me." Oh, she's jealous now. Chapter 1685. Tu Qingyan was amused. When have I ever not doted on you? This person was really regressing as he lived. It was as if he had shifted all his focus to her after he had taken off the burden on his shoulders, and no longer needed to care about those responsibilities. Whenever there was any trouble, he would inexplicably get jealous. In front of others, he was 1,000 miles away, but behind others, he was domineering and arrogant. To be able to win someone's heart was truly a lifetime's fortune. Xiao Su rested his chin on her shoulder and rubbed his cheek against her cheek. He snorted coldly. But you also dote on others. Jin Xian is not just anyone. In her heart, she had long regarded Jin Xian as her own younger brother. Xiao Su snorted again. He has Xining. What he meant was that he already had someone to dote on, so why should she dote on him? Tu Qingyan finally understood his point. She was both angry and amused. Okay. In the future, I'll only dote on you and the child. Xiao Su said domineeringly. No, the child will have a wife in the future. It's enough that you dote on me. I only have you as my wife. Was this still the same cold-faced king who had despised her age, height, and intelligence when they first met? Time was a butcher's knife. What the hell had happened? Why aren't you saying anything? His deep and pleasant voice was filled with displeasure. Tu Qingyan sighed softly. I'm thinking about the first time we met. Xiao Su's first reaction was to think of the time on Maotsuan Mountain. However, he knew that the first time they met was not the first time she was talking about. And then, how did His Royal Highness, who was feared by everyone, become the king of jealousy who only knows how to be jealous? Her tone was filled with emotion, but it was difficult to hide the teasing tone. As soon as she finished speaking, her legs hung in the air and she lost her balance. She was so shocked that she immediately reached out to hug his neck. Xiao Su leaned close to her ear and laughed so hard that it made her scalp tingle. Oh, so you're despising me now? Oh my god. I was just joking just now. How did the big ice cube change his face so quickly? The tenderness and sweetness disappeared. And it was as if he had turned back into that cold King Yama. She touched her heart and tried to make up for it. No, definitely not. You're still as handsome, and invincible as before. Xiao Su sneered disdainfully. He didn't buy it at all. He raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "Didn't you miss the old me? Then I'll let you savor it again today." Ah, reminiscing? What the hell was this? While she was in a daze, he carried her and strode towards the bed. Hey, Big Ice Cube, what are you going to do? Chu Qingyan finally panicked. Big Ice Cube wouldn't want to do those indescribable things, right? Xiao smiled faintly. That's right. It's exactly what you're thinking now. Chu Qingyan's face immediately turned red. You're shameless. It's okay. I'm shameless. I just want you. Chu Qingyan heard his evil and domineering words and her face turned even redder. Big Ice Cube had such boyfriend power. He placed her on the bed and took off his mask. Before she could sneak off the bed, he pressed down on her two restless hands with one hand and restrained her waist with the other, preventing her from moving. Chu Qingyan could feel the masculine aura closing in on her and couldn't help but swallow her saliva. The Big Ice Cube had become so dangerous and scary. She couldn't get used to it and couldn't help but negotiate. Big Ice Cube, let's talk nicely. Be careful of the baby in your stomach. Xiao stifled a laugh in his heart. She was best at judging the situation. She wouldn't be soft-hearted if she could fight, and she wouldn't be afraid of losing face if she could run. At this time he continued to tease her. You've already passed the critical period. Appropriate exercise will help you train your body. Chu Qingyan felt that his gaze was unbridled on her body and couldn't help but shrink her body. However, her entire body was shrouded under his body. No matter where she hid, she would still be under his eyes. She started to reflect on herself. What exactly did she do to provoke him? Just at this moment, the hand on her waist suddenly moved, followed by the sound of cloth tearing. Her entire body turned cold, and she couldn't help but look down. PFFF, her clothes were shattered by the Big Ice Cube. Shattered, her heart thumped. Just as she was about to struggle and push him away, he narrowed his eyes and revealed a dangerous smile. Are you satisfied with what you see? Cold Face Owl King HM? The Big Ice Cube was still conflicted about this. No matter which one it was, she liked both of them, okay? She blushed and looked up, wanting to explain to him, but she met his teasing gaze. She seemed to have been hit on her acupoints as she stared at him blankly. It was only when he kissed her lips that she suddenly understood the meaning behind the Big Ice Cube's series of abnormal actions. So the Big Ice Cube was doing it on purpose. Was this the romance between husband and wife? So embarrassing. But what should she do if she liked it so much? Her soft arms wrapped around his neck. The smile in Xian Mo's eyes deepened. His actions were domineering but not lacking in gentleness. After the entanglement, he lifted her body and laid on top of her without hesitation. After the entanglement, Xiao looked at the person sleeping peacefully in his arms. Her face was flushed and she was like a seductive peach. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her. Ever since he didn't have to live for his mission, she was the only one in his life. Just as he said before, after taking off the emperor's robe, he would only live for her. So, from now on she was his sky and his earth. He was willing to be crazy with her and play with her. He was willing to do everything for her. The Ice Cube faced outwards, leaving his gentleness only for her. Seeing her unconsciously wrap her arms around his waist and find a comfortable position in his arms to fall asleep, he chuckled softly. He reached out and hugged her, closing his eyes. With her around, life was peaceful. The other courtyard in the mansion was a bit unpeaceful. Just as Gong Sun Shui stepped into the room, Lan Si, who had received the news from the front yard, also arrived. Sect Master, why didn't you discuss it before going into battle yourself? When Lan Si heard that she was going to compete with Morong Yinxian, his heart was in his throat and he rushed over without stopping. Gong Sun Shui invited him to sit down and asked someone to serve tea. She said calmly, High Priestess, don't you believe in my ability? Lan Si immediately said, This isn't a matter of whether I believe in you or not. Swords are silent, and the other party isn't easy to deal with. Why don't you let Qingyu take your place? High Priestess, you said that you would listen to my arrangements. Why are you objecting at the beginning? Gong Sun Shui looked disappointed. Lan Si remembered what he had promised and smiled embarrassedly. His attitude softened, but he was still a bit conflicted. But, High Priestess, don't worry. I won't let myself get hurt. Since she had already said this, Lan Si couldn't use the words he had prepared. In the end, he could only sigh and compromise. After all, the sect master had been making her own decisions since she was young. Seeing that the high priestess was no longer conflicted, she changed the topic with a faint smile in her eyes. High priestess, what kind of person do you think Morong Yinxian is? Lan Si was stunned. What did the sect master mean? Did she fall for Morong Yinxian? Love at first sight? Chapter 1686. Lan Si's expression didn't escape Gong Xuanxue's eyes. She couldn't help but facepalm. Ever since Xiao Yao appeared, the high priest had been acting strangely. What the hell was he thinking? High priest, from the perspective of the country, please comment on Morong Yinxian. She repeated the question again. Lan Si also knew that he was overthinking. How could the sect master be the kind of person who would be seduced by beauty? So he immediately stopped thinking about it and took the question seriously. Morong Yinxuan's performance on the battlefield during this period of time shows that he is a brave and resourceful person. Not only is he able to command soldiers, he is also able to go to the battlefield to fight the enemy. This is truly rare. However, if he only has the ability to mobilize soldiers, he can only be regarded as an outstanding general. However, this person also knows how to use people well. The Ri clan has been in decline for so many years, and the people's hearts are no longer united. Although they can be united in the general direction, they all have their own ulterior motives in private. However, he can quickly buy people's hearts and use them to the best of their ability. He can also make them submit to him. I think that even the previous sect masters of the Ri clan couldn't do it. He is skilled in both the pen and the sword, and can fight well. This is a very outstanding leader. However, it is often difficult for people like him to take care of the people after the war. He is slightly inferior in political affairs. After all, no one is so perfect. However, Lan Si continued, but after the disaster, the reconstruction, the resettlement of the people, and a series of policies, it is enough to show that he is a qualified ruler. Although he didn't want to boost the morale of others and diminish his own prestige, he still gave a fair evaluation. This Morong Yinxian is the most outstanding person I have seen in my many years of life. Hearing this evaluation, Gong Xuanxue's eyes raised a little bit of a smile. What the high priest said coincides with what I think. Realizing that he had praised the enemy sect master in front of the sect master, Lan Si felt a little apologetic and hurriedly said, "Sect master, this old one didn't mean anything else. You are also the most outstanding person this old one has ever seen in governing a country." Gong Xuanxue waved her hand indifferently. "Don't be afraid, high priest. You're just telling the truth. I'm not a petty person who can't tolerate others being better than me." Lan Si was very pleased with her calm demeanor. He straightened his back and said, "Sovereign, you have a kind heart, broad vision, resourceful, and know how to make good use of people. As the ruler of a country, this is enough." As long as the civil and military officials are used properly, the generals can charge and break through the enemy lines to protect the country, and the civil officials can build irrigation works to benefit the people. Why do you need to do everything personally? That's why it's a blessing for the world to unify the sun-moon race and take over your position. Gong Xuanxue shook her head in her heart. The high priest had always placed his hopes on her, and always forgot about her hidden illness. But at this time, she didn't want to remind him and make him sad. "You're right, high priest," she replied calmly. The high priest seemed to be encouraged. He thought of the competition 2 days later and said confidently, "Sovereign, you must have a well-thought-out plan to use the chess competition. The chess competition doesn't just test the chess player's ability to plan and plan, it also tests the player's temperament. Only if you can calm down in a chaotic situation, have the courage to cut off all means of retreat in a desperate situation, and be neither arrogant nor rash, can you walk to the end. If you win the chess competition, I'm afraid no one can say that you don't have the ability to unify the two races." The chess competition simulated a real battlefield. If you couldn't win in a chess competition, it would be difficult to win in a real battle. That's why you used this competition to stop people from gossiping. At the same time, it also showed the sovereign's ability to devise strategies. It was a brilliant plan. As for the martial arts competition, your martial arts were personally taught by a few retired masters of the moon race. I dare not say that you're invincible, but at least no one can beat you now. Of course, even without the Xiao clan, I believe you're invincible. This way, Murong Yunxian won't be able to defeat you alone, and no one will dare to have any objections. Lan Si clapped her hands as if victory was in sight. She couldn't help but laugh. Sovereign, this is a brilliant plan. You used a competition to convince the world of your ability without harming innocent people. It's wonderful. Gong Suanxue looked at the overjoyed high priest and smiled very lightly. That's right, the purpose of these competitions was to convince the world, but she didn't do it for herself. But she wouldn't tell the high priest about this. Or the first person to stop her would be this person in front of her. Qiu Feng served tea. Lan Si was thirsty after talking so much, so she took a few sips. At this time Gong Suanxue thought of something and said to Lan Si, "Today after I met Murong Yunxian, I found something very puzzling." Lan Si immediately asked, "What's the matter?" Gong Suanxue stood up and paced around the room, her eyes lost in thought. "I found that Murong Yunxuan's attitude towards the Xiao family is very different. It's not as simple as friends. He is very respectful towards young Master Xiao and Madame Xiao, especially towards Madame Xiao. When I sent the challenge letter, Murong Yunxian actually subconsciously asked for her opinion. This makes me very puzzled. What role does the Xiao family play in Murong Yunxuan's life?" Lan Si was also shocked. "Sovereign, are you saying that you are worried that the Xiao family will use the emperor to command the nobles? That Murong Yunxian is just a puppet?" Gong Suanxue shook her head in amusement at the high priest's overreaction. The high priest didn't know much about the Xiao family. At most, he only had contact with Xiao Yao, so it was normal for him to have this misunderstanding. However, she had spent some time with Chu Qingyan and the others. Although it wasn't long, it was enough to tell a person's character. In her eyes, Chu Qingyan and the others were not people who only cared about profits and power. Hearing the sect master's denial, Lan Si stroked his beard in confusion. "Then what does the sect master mean?" Gong Suanxue said with her hands behind her back. Did the high priest not notice that the guards following the Xiao family and Murong Yunxuan's guards are of the same origin? If Chu Qingyan was here, she would definitely be amazed by her amazing insight. Lan Si carefully recalled the information he received and nodded in surprise. Murong Yunxian has lived outside for more than 10 years. He should have a great relationship with the Xiao family. High priest, let Wei Yu secretly investigate the relationship between Murong Yunxian and the Xiao family. After all, knowing the enemy and yourself is the key to victory. Lan Si felt that her words made sense and immediately put down his teacup. He was about to stand up when he was stopped. "Does the sect master have any other orders?" Gong Suanxue muttered. "The Xiao family is like an impenetrable fortress. It is very difficult to find out, and will even alert the enemy. Let Wei Yu start with the people from the Yang Yen sect. Those people are not tight-lipped, and it is easy to pry out information. However, you still have to be careful. They are all foxes who have lived for decades." Lan Si nodded before leaving. Gong Suanxue looked at the high priest's back as he left in a hurry, and felt a little guilty. She didn't really want to know the enemy and herself to victory. She just wanted to know what kind of life he had been living during his years of wandering outside. Chapter 1687. The people from the Sunblaze clan were just outside the city. Elder Zhuo's follower, Protector Chui, liked to drink, but he had a bad habit of talking nonsense after getting drunk. Thus, Wei Yu used some tricks to get information from him. Because of the urgency of this mission, Wei Yu only found out about it at night and knocked on Gong Suanxue's door. Xiao Feng came in to report, and Gong Suanxue let her in without thinking. Wei Yu told her all the information she had obtained. When she learned that Murong Yunxian had lost his master's protection after leaving North Korea, he had lost his home and was being persecuted, her eyes flashed with pain. Then she heard that he was saved by Chu Qingyan, and had been with her for the past 10 years. She felt relieved. Although it had been hard at the beginning, he had met a benefactor in the end. It was much better than living in fear for so many years, so she was relieved. This also made her understand many things. Why did the Xiao family have a noble aura? Why did they have so many elites around them? Why did Xiao Yao solve the problem so easily? Why did Morong Yinxian respect Chu Qingyan so much? Everything had been answered. They were members of the royal family of a large country, so everything made sense. As it turned out, that idiot was a prince. No wonder. Wei Yu thought that the sect master was shocked by the news. When he first heard about it, it took him a long time to digest it. As expected, his premonition was right. Those people were not simple. He did not expect them to be so complicated. He thought about the current situation. If the Xiao clan sent reinforcements to the Sun clan, then the Moon clan would definitely lose. Wei Yu's heart jumped, and he hurriedly expressed his worries. Gong Xuanxue came back to her senses and shook her head. If the Xiao family wanted reinforcements, they would have sent reinforcements during the most difficult time. They wouldn't wait until the Yu family's position is stable, so you don't have to worry. Wei Yu thought about it and agreed. Seeing the sect master so calm, it seemed like he was making a fuss. He couldn't help but feel ashamed. How's the matter I gave you coming along? Seeing the sect master mention something else, Wei Yu cupped his hands and said, I've found their whereabouts. I'm making arrangements and will be able to capture them soon. You did very well, Gong Xuanxue affirmed. Wei Yu's lips curled into a smile. Sect master, what are you saying? This is what this humble servant should do. Gong Xuanxue raised her eyes and looked at the person who had been by her side since she was a child. The Wei family was the support that her father had left for her. This person was the only head of the Wei family. However, after her father passed away, the Wei family was also persecuted by the Su family. When she was controlled by the Su family, the Wei family thought of ways to send him to her. When they first met, he was still young. His childish face showed unswerving determination. She still remembered the first words he said. I, Wei Yu, swear on my life that I will do everything in my power to clear all obstacles and protect Gong Xuanxue. These words made her look at the only heir of the Wei family in a new light. At the same time, she firmly believed that she would be able to get out of this predicament and fight against the Su family together with him. After so many years, she had suffered so much. He had also suffered so much in secret. Now that she had lived up to everyone's expectations and sat on the position of sect master of the US sect, he had also relied on his own strength to establish an underground intelligence group. He quickly rose in the imperial court and became her eyes and right-hand man in the Moon clan. Big brother Wei, it's been hard on you these years. Recalling the bits and pieces of the past, so many years had passed unknowingly. Gong Xuanxue forgot her identity at this moment and thanked him gratefully. This big brother Wei pulled Wei Yu's memories back to the first time they met more than 10 years ago. The little girl who was not even as tall as his shoulder, but shouldered a blood feud. At that time she would cry, laugh, and be afraid. She did not have the coldness and calmness after experiencing so much. At that time he thought that he must do his best to protect her. Unexpectedly, more than 10 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Wei Yu waved his hand. It's not hard. It's what I should do. Gong Xuanxue shook her head. In this world, there is no such thing as should or should not. The Wei family has been loyal to my father. Now you have done so many things for me. I don't know how to thank you. Wei Yu smiled. You and your father are both wise masters. The Moon clan can only be stable and peaceful in your hands. You are worthy of our Wei family's loyalty. As long as the people live and work in peace, the Wei family will be satisfied. Gong Xuanxue's eyes moved. Yes. In the future, the people will live and work in peace. The world will be stable and peaceful. You will not be disappointed. That day will come soon. Wei Yu's face bloomed when he heard this. I knew that you would bring us happiness and good health. Gong Xuanxue smiled slightly. Seeing that it was late, Wei Yu did not want to disturb her. He said a few more words and left. Gong Xuanxue looked at the dark night outside the window. Her eyes were firm. Big brother Wei, I will not let you down. Because of the Ice Beauty's abnormal behavior these few days, Xiao Yao was annoyed. He wanted to look for her, but he was stopped by Qiu Feng, saying that her sect master was busy with political affairs, so he didn't see her for the entire day. Now, she was lying on the roof drinking alone. He looked at the Ice Beauty's courtyard through the courtyard wall. He sighed and drank quietly. Soon, there were several wine jugs by his feet. He did not expect that he, the carefree king, would one day drown his sorrows in alcohol. If this news spread to the Sichuan capital, those people would laugh their heads off. Just as he was sighing to himself, his sharp eyes saw a man's figure enter the Ice Beauty's courtyard. Very quickly, he was brought into the room by Qiu Feng. Thinking of how he had been refused entry for an entire day, that man actually managed to see the Ice Beauty so easily. Xiao Yao's eyes widened. A man and a woman alone in a room in the middle of the night. Just thinking about it made his heart itch. He held the wine jug tightly. Soon, the sparkling wine flowed along the cracks of the jug. Under the moonlight, it shone brightly, illuminating Xiao Yao's angry, sad and indignant eyes. The time it took to brew a cup of tea passed. Half an incense's time passed. What were they doing in the room? Only when his entire body was chilled by the cold did the door open again. He could not see the other person's face clearly. He was furious. He flipped over and walked to the entrance of the Ice Beauty's courtyard. However, that person's movements were fast. He could only see his back from afar. It was somewhat familiar. He grabbed the Yu Clan guard's collar and asked with narrowed eyes. Who was that person who just left? The person in front of him had a close relationship with his sect master. The guard did not think much and replied. It was Lord Wei. Wei Yu? The guard saw Xiao Yao's cold aura, and wondered if he was jealous. He remembered that the high priest had said that this second young master Xiao was likely to enter the sect master's harem. He hurriedly said, Lord Wei grew up with our sect master. The sect master trusts Lord Wei very much. He must have come tonight for an urgent matter. Please don't think too much. Xiao Yao only listened to the first half of the sentence. He automatically blocked out the rest. He remembered that she said that she had no other relationship with him. She lied to him. He snorted coldly and let go of the guard's collar. In a flash, he disappeared. The guard thought that he had seen a ghost. Gong Suanxue had just taken off her coat when she heard the window open. She immediately turned around vigilantly, wanting to grab the coat on the shelf. However, it was too late. A dangerous male aura approached her from behind, enveloping her entire body. Chapter 1688. It had only been a blink of an eye from when she heard the noise, to when the other person approached. It was obvious how powerful the other person's martial arts were. Gong Sunshui didn't dare to act rashly because the other person didn't do anything other than approach her from behind. Her voice was cold. May I ask who you are? Why did you barge into my room in the middle of the night? However, this sentence was like a stone thrown into the sea. The person behind her didn't make a sound. The atmosphere suddenly became strange. Gong Sunshui didn't know what this person wanted to do. Her clothes were thin and couldn't stand the cold. In this situation, she was at a disadvantage. She didn't know the intentions of the person behind her, but she couldn't waste time with him. So she reached out to take her coat. As long as her body was warm, she would be able to deal with any accidents. But before her hand could touch the clothes, someone grabbed her wrist forcefully, and the scorching sensation made her body stiffen. She didn't want to sit and wait for death. Her left hand could still move freely. She turned around to strike behind her. However, even though she was fast, the other party was faster. He raised his other hand and grabbed her wrist, as if he had anticipated all of her attacks. His body leaned to one side, dodging her kick, and he turned her around and held her in his arms. From behind, it looked like she was being held by her lover. After Wei Yu left, she had extinguished the candles in the room. She didn't expect the other person to take advantage of her. She was in the open and the enemy was in the dark. She was at a disadvantage. Being held in the other person's arms in such an awkward position, it was inevitable that there would be friction. Her clothes were thin, and she quickly felt the warmth from the other person's chest. Her cheeks flushed, but it was from anger. Who are you? What do you want? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you've taken me hostage. I'm not afraid of death. She lowered her voice and said coldly, "From the fight just now, there was no doubt that the person who attacked her was a man, and a man whose martial arts were much better than hers. She couldn't use force. She could only use her wits." A light snort came to her ear. Gong Sun Shue's eyes were cold. Her righteous words were only met with a disdainful snort. Her heart sank. She had been in power for so many years and had cleaned up the court. Needless to say, she had offended many people. To her, assassinations were nothing out of the ordinary. She was not afraid of death, but she still had many things to do. She could not die yet. When the other party came in, he had many opportunities to take her life, but he did not do so. Perhaps his goal was not her life. Perhaps they could negotiate. "Hero, I don't know what you want, but if you want money, then name a number and I'll satisfy you. If you want power, then you should have known who I was before you came here. I'll satisfy you as well." She spoke word by word, using her whole body to feel the changes in his emotions, to see if she could grasp what he was thinking. Unfortunately, the other party did not seem to be interested in her suggestion. She began to reflect. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly? At this moment, the hand holding her wrist suddenly moved. His fingertips caressed her skin, and his arm slowly tightened, destroying her thoughts of trying to get away from his chest. This invasive action made her mind go blank, and she had a guess that she didn't want to think about. Could it be that this person, before she could continue her train of thought, a mocking voice rang in her ears. "Money, power, influence, I have them all. I don't care for them. If you want them, I can give them to you as long as you promise me one thing." What an arrogant tone. Wait, this voice. Gong Sun Shue's eyes widened. You are Xiao Yao? At this time, Xiao Yao did not care if he was recognized or not. From the moment he saw Wei Yu until now, he had been suppressing his anger, and now it was getting bigger and bigger. He felt that his whole body was about to explode. He let go of her hand, and threw her on the bed. Because the winter brocade quilt was thick, he did not have to worry about her getting hurt. She did not get a response from the other party. Instead, she was pushed onto the bed. That's right. While Gong Sun Shui was still wondering why this person suddenly appeared in her room, she was thrown on the bed. She struggled to get up, but his body was already on top of hers. When he spoke earlier, she recognized his voice. At this moment, with the faint light from the lanterns outside the window, she could once again clearly see the appearance of the person in front of her. He was so close that she could count his eyelashes and see the fire in his eyes that could not be ignored. At such a close distance, she could smell the alcohol on his body. She could not help but be surprised. You drank? This guy couldn't be drunk and acting crazy, right? However, the person in front of her just snorted and did not answer. Instead, his eyes became brighter. She avoided the bright eyes that she could not look directly at and whispered, "Why did you come to my room in the middle of the night? Get off me." Xiao Yao imprisoned her under his body, and did not let her struggle. His voice was deep and hoarse. "Why can other people come to you in the middle of the night, but I can't? What other people?" Gong Sun Shui did not understand his words. The black shadow in front of her covered her lips, without any explanation. Her whole mind went blank. She looked cold, but her lips were soft and warm. He looked like the sun, but his lips were cold. Fire and ice touched, creating the most beautiful intertwining. He kissed her quickly and without any rhythm. He wanted to swallow this deceiving tongue into his stomach, so that she would no longer deceive him. He was eager to leave his mark on this person, so that no one would think about it anymore. Gong Sun Shui did not expect him to do this. At this time, she was a little dizzy from the alcohol on his body. Her hands were locked and her feet were pinned down by him, so she could not move at all. She could only be forced to endure his inexplicable anger and desperate venting. He only left her lips when he felt that she was almost out of breath. Gong Sun Shui panted, her eyes a little blurred. After a while, she came back to her senses. She pursed her red lips and looked at the person in front of her who was different from usual. "What's wrong with you today?" She was shocked by her own hoarse voice, but more than that, she was surprised that the first thing she thought of at this time was to care about him instead of being angry at what he had just done. Xiao Yao raised his other hand and stroked the corner of her lips. His action was so ambiguous that her snow-white skin could not help but blush. He saw that she was still looking at him with an innocent look. He was angry and approached her. When he was only a paper away from her, he narrowed his eyes and said angrily, "You still ask me what's wrong with me? You have another man behind my back." Gong Sun Shui was stunned. What nonsense was he talking about? She opened her mouth and wanted to scold him for talking nonsense, but he did not give her a chance to speak at all. "I don't want to listen to you now." He came down on her again and blocked her words with his tongue. Chapter 1689. If you want to convict someone, you should at least give them a chance to explain themselves. However, the person in front of her didn't give her a chance other than blocking her mouth. Gong Sun Shui was angry and amused at the same time. She couldn't move or struggle. She was like a fish on the chopping board, and she could only let him do whatever he wanted. Xiao Yao didn't feel her struggle. He slowly reduced his strength from the beginning, and slowly turned from a violent charge to a gentle attack. During this period he left her lips. She wanted to explain while she was sober, but he covered her again. Every time she wanted to open her mouth, he wouldn't allow her to say anything. In the end, she was addicted to his continuous attacks. At first, he was the one who took the initiative, but in the end, she couldn't tell who took the initiative. She didn't know how long this went on, but the two finally separated, panting. Gong Sun Shui didn't think that she would let him do this. It was her first time being so intimate. At this moment, he was staring at her like a wolf, as if he wanted to eat her up. She felt her face burning. She reached out and pushed him. Her voice was low and hoarse. "Let me go." They couldn't go on like this, or it would be difficult to end it. "No." He stared at her stubbornly. "I won't let go." Every time he replayed the scene of Wei Yu leaving, he would be burning with jealousy. Yes, he admitted that he was jealous. He was jealous. He couldn't help but want to occupy her heart. He didn't want anyone to see her shy side. She rarely saw such a childish side of him. Was it stimulated by the alcohol? But thinking about what they did just now, he didn't look like a child at all. Gong Sun Shui tried to calm her heartbeat, but she couldn't ignore the breath of the person in front of her. After the deep kiss just now, both of their clothes were messy. His clothes were open, and it was a little messy. Strands of hair fell in front of his forehead, but it couldn't cover his black and bright eyes. That pair of peach blossom eyes seemed to be able to speak. Their affection grew from shallow to deep, and it was like the fragrance of wine on his body. It was intoxicating. His lips were so red that they looked like they were dyed with rouge. Together with his reddened eyes, he exuded a charm, a devilish aura, and a carefree aura. These completely different feelings coexisted on his body, but they converged to form the most captivating appearance, enough to turn all living things upside down. In front of Xiao Yao, her snow-white skin was dyed with a blush. Her usual coldness was swept away, and she revealed a delicate appearance. Her snow-white face was as delicate as a hibiscus, causing people's hearts to itch. Her clear eyes were filled with ripples due to her emotions just now. The light from outside shone in and lit up the expression in her eyes. All of a sudden, they were filled with a myriad of colors, sparkling brightly. He recalled the place where his fingers had just touched. Her skin was as smooth as silk, and his heart instantly yearned for it. His arms were on either side of her, pressing down on her sleeves while she pressed down on his clothes. His black hair was intertwined with hers, making it impossible to tell whose was whose. It was clearly the middle of winter, but the temperature in the room continued to rise, and the atmosphere became more and more ambiguous. She pursed her lips and pushed him again. "Let's talk things out. I can explain what you said just now." In the gap just now, she finally understood why he was angry. She wanted to explain so that he wouldn't misunderstand, but she still had to let him go first. However, Xiao Yao had already tasted the sweetness, so how could he let her go so easily? Moreover, it was obvious that he didn't want to listen to her and wanted to eat her up first. His body moved with his heart, and his hand had already touched her belt. Gong Sun Shui's body stiffened, and she reached out to grab his restless hand. Her face flushed red. "You're drunk." "I'm not drunk." he retorted in a low voice. It was just that the wine didn't intoxicate him, but he was drunk on himself. Get up first, then we'll talk. If this went on, things would definitely go wrong. She couldn't help but softly coax him again. If it was any other time, he would have been moved by her words, but Xiao didn't fall for it tonight. In order to prove that he wasn't drunk, he leaned over again. However, in order to punish her, he bit her lips. His hand had already broken free from her hand and was roaming all over her body. Ever since Gong Sunxue was young, she had perfected her body and worked hard. She had never done anything between men and women, so when he anxiously lit a fire on her body, her entire body was in a blank state. Perhaps it was because the person in front of her was her sweetheart, so she didn't have any thoughts of resisting. Sometimes, when one's mind couldn't react, a person's subconscious actions would start from the beginning. Just as Xiao was about to untie her belt, Qiu Feng's anxious voice suddenly came from outside the door. Master, you're not asleep yet? This subordinate heard some noise and woke up to take a look. The two people on the bed were stunned by this sudden voice. Xiao's hand froze, and he looked at the person on the bed whose clothes were half undone. Gong Sunxue didn't have time to look at his expression. Her gaze was a bit nervous as she looked at the door. The light outside reflected Qiu Feng's figure on the window. Her waist was slightly bent, and it could be seen that she was really anxious. She was about to reach out to knock on the door. I'm fine. You should go and rest early. This calm voice made the person outside the door feel relieved, but it made the person beside her stare at her in disbelief. Hearing Qiu Feng's footsteps leave, Gong Sunxue's tense heart also relaxed. She let out a sigh of relief, but when she turned around, she met Xiao's surprised gaze. She was stunned and then looked away, not wanting to look at him. She was a bit annoyed and a bit embarrassed. Suddenly, she felt his hand touch her face, and she couldn't help but look back at him. Why did you do that just now? Xiao asked softly. If she opened her mouth to call for help, then Qiu Feng would bring people in, and there would be no leeway between them. Gong Sunxue was shocked by his words. Actually, she didn't know why she did that either. Maybe she couldn't bear to see him get blamed. I'm not telling you. It was rare for her to show her temper. The episode just now had already dispersed the smell of alcohol on Xiao's body, waking him up from his drunkenness. Actually, his alcohol tolerance wasn't bad, but the smell of alcohol had gotten to his head, which was why he did such a thing in a moment of impulse. He silently tidied up her clothes and tightened her belt. Then he threw himself onto the other side of the blanket and covered his face with his hand. He was dejected and blamed himself. Gong Sunxue was stunned by his series of actions. She turned her head to look at him. Are you all right? He put down his hand and turned his face to look at her. His eyes were slightly stung by her red and swollen lips. He didn't control his strength just now and hurt her. He felt that he wasn't a man. He reached out a finger and tenderly touched her lips. His gaze was as gentle as water. Gong Sunxue was stunned. The him in front of her didn't have the overbearing fierceness from before, nor did he have his usual frivolous attitude. Right now he was serious and affectionate. It was as if she had become the most precious treasure in his hands. Suddenly he reached out and tightly hugged her. His voice was as low as a spring. I'm sorry. Chapter 1690. The moment he woke up and saw what he had done to her, he wanted to find a hole to bury himself in. However, no matter what he said or did, he could not make up for the mistake he had just made. Gong Sunxue was stunned by his sudden action. Sensing his guilt and self-blame, she slowly reached out and hugged him. He thought that she would be angry, scold him, or hit him. He did not expect that she would help him out and even hug him. Just as Xiao was shocked, he heard her say, I don't blame you. Gong Sunxue smiled faintly. How could she bear to blame him? It takes two to clap. If she had not unintentionally resisted and deliberately allowed him to do so, she would rather die than live in dishonor and not let him get close to her. If she liked him, she liked him. She just could not control herself. Xiao hugged her even tighter. I shouldn't have done that to you. I was wrong. Gong Sunxue stroked his back and said softly, It's okay. I didn't get hurt. Besides, I was willing. As soon as she said this, she felt his whole body tremble. Then he looked up happily, his attractive peach blossom eyes sparkling. Really? She had just blurted it out because he was too uncomfortable. She did not expect this guy to react so emotionally. She was a little regretful that her emotions had been swayed by him, and she had said such shameful words. However, in the end she acquiesced. Xiao suddenly hugged her again, ecstatic. A woman is willing to bear the joy of fish and water with a man, which means that she likes him. Ice Beauty, you like me, don't you? The person who had been rubbing against her shoulder suddenly raised his head and said something that caught her off guard. She looked away unnaturally. What nonsense are you talking about? Get off me. She was lacking in breath. It was obvious that she was trying to cover it up. How could Xiao not see it? He grinned and hugged her tightly. I won't let go. I won't let go. I knew you were the best to me. Wei Yu is not as good as me in everything. You can't look at her again. Gong Sunshui already knew why this person had suddenly barged into her room tonight. She looked at the shameless person in front of her speechlessly. You're talking nonsense again. Wei Yu came over tonight to report something urgent. What are you thinking? So this was the truth. Xiao was a little guilty. It seemed that he had been blinded by jealousy and misunderstood her. Okay, this is my fault. I shouldn't have misunderstood you. He lowered his head and reflected. However, as he spoke, he remembered the guard's words and immediately looked up. Wait, I heard that Wei Yu is your childhood sweetheart. This can't be false, right? Gong Sunshui didn't expect him to know about this, but she didn't think it was a big deal. She said, the Wei family used to be my father's confidants. After my father left, he asked the Wei family to take care of me. Wei Yu was sent to me at that time. She hid her identity and helped me build my reputation. Hearing this version, Xiao couldn't help but feel jealous again. Childhood sweethearts, sharing weal and woe, starting a business together. This kind of relationship was hard to surpass. He really treats you differently. Gong Sunshui couldn't help but laugh at his jealousy. What are you talking about? There's nothing between us. Moreover, Wei Yu has a fiancé. Don't ruin their marriage. Hearing this, Xiao was finally relieved. He couldn't help but hug her and rub her shoulder. I know you treat me differently. I'm so happy. He returned to his usual coquettish and cute self. Gong Sunshui sighed in relief. This guy was finally normal. Okay, I know what you want to know. Go back. It's late. I'm sleepy. Ever since her hidden illness acted up, she hadn't had a good night's sleep. She had been tormenting him for a long time. Now she was sleepy. They had just talked about a lot of things. Although the Ice Beauty didn't admit her feelings for him, her expression and behavior couldn't lie. How could he bear to let her go at such a moment? No, I'm not going. You sleep. What about you? I'll watch you sleep. Gong Sunshui really lost to him. People could really be shameless to this extent. She looked at him wrapped around her like an octopus. She really wanted to kick him off, but when she saw his satisfied smile, she suddenly felt greedy. One must enjoy life to the fullest. Don't let the golden cup face the moon empty. Forget it. In the last bit of time, she would treat herself and him better. Thinking that he wouldn't do those embarrassing things again, she closed her eyes in peace. Xiao looked at her with infatuation. He had already sobered up and his impulses had receded. How could he do anything to her? The best time should be on the wedding night. He kissed her and smiled with satisfaction. Ice Beauty, after you and Gene X Science competition, I'll go and ask for your hand. I want to marry you. Gong Sunshui, who had her eyes closed, was shocked. She couldn't recover for a long time. Her heart was filled with sweet and bitter feelings. Xiao looked at the sleeping face in front of him. He felt that he couldn't get enough of it. After a long time, he gradually fell asleep. When she heard the sound of steady breathing beside her, Gong Sunshui slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were filled with tears. She reached out and touched his face. She smiled, but her tears fell. I thought that the most difficult time of my youth was the greatest injustice given by the heavens. But after meeting you, I realized that the abyss between us is the cruelest injustice given by the heavens. I really want to reply to you and say that I'll wait for you. But those secrets that I can't tell you are stuck in my throat. I can't say that from the bottom of my heart. Love is separated by mountains and seas. The mountains and seas cannot be reconciled. She raised her head and kissed the corner of his mouth. Swallowing the bitterness, she finally closed her eyes. Sorry, I can't respond to your love. It was a dreamless night. When Gongsun Shui woke up, she found that the other side of the bed was empty. But the traces of sleep proved that everything that happened last night was not a dream. She rubbed her forehead. Xiao came in with water. Sect Master, you haven't slept for such a long time. I'm really happy. Hearing this, Gongsun Shui curved her lips. Maybe it was because his scent was too nice, or maybe it was because her heart was very calm with him around. That was why she had a good night's sleep. Indeed, I feel refreshed. Xiao happily helped her wash up. Gongsun Shui looked at the sun outside the window and asked, "Where is Qingyu?" "Waiting outside. Ask him to find out where Sect Master Morong is. I want to see him." Xiao was confused. The competition is tomorrow. Why does Sect Master want you to see him today? What if he tries to do something? Don't worry, I know what to do. Go. Xiao couldn't disobey Sect Master's words. While worrying about Sect Master's health, he turned and left. Chapter 1691. Today, everyone discovered one thing, that is, Xiao Yao's mood was very good. Wasn't he smiling while eating, drinking tea, chatting? It was as if nothing could attract his attention as he sat there in a daze, grinning foolishly. The retired emperor couldn't stand it any longer and slapped him. "Stinky brat, I told you to smile, smile, smile. What are you smiling for?" Xiao Yao rubbed the bump on his head, still grinning as he replied, "I'm not telling you. Anyway, it's a good thing." The retired emperor looked at Xiao Su worriedly. This child couldn't have turned silly, right? Xiao Su shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. In another courtyard, Jin Xian had just finished chatting with a few of his confidants, when an unexpected person appeared in front of him. Sect Master Gongsun? Jin Xian was slightly surprised, and the people around Jin Xian instantly held the sabers at their waists vigilantly, as if as long as there was something wrong with the other party, they would pull out their sabers. Gongsun Shui's gaze swept across those people's hands and finally landed on Jin Xian, her voice faint. "I was just passing by when I realized that Sect Master Morong was here, so I came over to say hello." The corners of everyone's eyes twitched. "You really passed by quite a distance, already passing through half of the residents." Jin Xian raised his hand to dismiss them. "I see, please take a seat, Sect Master Gongsun." Originally these two people were like fire and water, but unexpectedly they could sit together peacefully. If people from both sides saw this, their eyeballs would probably pop out. The tea was served. Gongsun Shui didn't let anyone test for poison, just picked it up, lifted the cup lid, stirred the tea leaves floating on top and took a sip. Seeing her unguarded, Jin Xian couldn't help but raise his brows. "Sect Master Gongsun, aren't you afraid that I'll poison you?" He didn't ignore the nervous expressions of the attendants following beside her. "I believe that Sect Master Morong is a magnanimous and upright person, and wouldn't stoop to such lowly acts." Gongsun Shui put down the teacup and looked at him. Jin Xian smiled. "Thank you for your trust." At this point, the atmosphere was a little cold. Although the two of them had heard of each other's deeds, today was only the second time they had met. Jin Xian was also a man of few words. For a moment, he had nothing to say and didn't know where to start. It was Gongsun Shui who spoke first. "I heard that you've lived outside for more than 10 years. This topic caused the Japanese to glare angrily. If it wasn't for the Yu clan's tricks, how could their young clan leader be wandering outside? Jin Xian was not angry because of this, nor did he feel that it was embarrassing to mention this matter. Yes, in order to avoid being hunted down, I had no choice. Gongsun Shui sighed softly. Life outside must not be easy. In the beginning, yes. But after meeting my master, everything started to get better. Jin Xian looked at her and suddenly said bluntly, "Don't you know all this?" This morning, he received news that Protector Chui was drunk and talking nonsense. After investigating, he found that the Yu clan had appeared during this time. Connecting the two, he had an answer. Gongsun Shui was not embarrassed at all. There were Japanese and Xiao clan people everywhere. It was not easy for her to hide her actions from them, but she did not care. As long as she achieved her goal, it was fine. Some things are one thing to hear and another to hear from the person involved. Hearsay is not as true as the real person. Jin Xian raised his eyebrows. This person really dared to talk. What do you want to know? He didn't believe that she came here just to chat. Gongsun Shui seemed to have seen through his thoughts and said innocently, I just came to chat with you to relieve boredom. It's quite boring to stay in the courtyard all day. Autumn Maple, who was standing behind her, heard her sect leader's words and had the illusion that the sun rose from the west. There were so many memorials on the sect leader's desk, and she read them until late last night. Jin Xian did not comment. Thus, for some reason, the two started talking about his life in the Sichuan. Because it involved a lot of political matters, Jin Xian basically skimmed over them and focused on his life in Jiangnan and his fief. At the end of the conversation, Gongsun Shui said with some emotion, Madame Xiao is a good person. Jin Xian smiled and nodded. Yes, my mistress is my benefactor. I suddenly feel that your life in the Sichuan is very comfortable. Coming here is a grievance for you. Gongsun Shui's eyes flashed slightly. Her emotions were unclear as she said this. Jin Xian's expression was rather helpless. If not for all these things, perhaps I would not have come to North Korea. Perhaps I could have lived a peaceful life. As soon as he finished speaking, Gongsun Shui stood up. The shadow of the trees cast on her body, obscuring her expression. She said, after chatting for so long, it seems that it's almost time for dinner. I won't disturb sect leader Morong any longer. Goodbye. Jin Xian did not expect her to leave so soon. He was reluctant to see her go, but he still stood up to send her off. It was a pleasure chatting with sect leader Gongsun. I hope there will be more opportunities like this in the future. All right, see you at the competition tomorrow. Gongsun Shui nodded, then turned and left with her people. The Japanese had been keeping an eye on Gongsun Shui and the others for a long time. Their bodies were tense, and they didn't expect that Gongsun Shui and the others were just here to drink tea and chat. Looking at the group of people walking away, they were confused. Jin Xian watched the snow-white figure gradually disappear into the distance. A strange feeling lingered in his heart. He had only met her twice, but he had a feeling of regret that he hadn't met her earlier. He had always been a man of few words, but when he sat with her, he found that he wanted to say a few more words to her. He couldn't help but want to get closer to her. He had never felt this way before. He was momentarily at a loss. Was it because this person's political views were very similar to his? He did not have an answer. Gongsun Shui, who left the courtyard quickly, felt like she was running away. She walked back to her courtyard with light steps and waved the people behind her away. Qiufeng knew that she had fallen ill a few days ago, so he did not dare to stay far away from her. Qiufeng saw that she was holding onto a tree trunk with a dazed expression, as if she had lost her soul. He could not help but worry. Gongsun Shui stared at a certain point in the sky. Her heart was at a loss. She had been confident in every step of the plan. But today, she had heard so many things from the past. She saw in his eyes the yearning for freedom, the yearning and anticipation for life in the Sichuan. She was greatly shaken and began to reflect on the situation she had set up. She had considered everything, but she had forgotten one thing: whether or not he was willing to enter the game. Only now did she realize that she had been too selfish. Selfishly, she felt that everyone should take responsibility for their own fate and return to their original path. But not everyone was willing to return to their original position. She was wrong, but it was too late. Moreover, she had no other choice. Whether he was willing or not, this path had to continue. There was a metallic taste in her throat. She pursed her lips and spat it out. Qiufeng had been nervously watching the person under the tree. Suddenly, he saw her bend over and spit out blood. His entire body shook. Sect Master. Chapter 1692. Sect Master. You've been like this for a few days. We can't delay any longer. I'll go find the high priest right now. Xiao said with a sobbing tone. She was scared out of her wits. Gong Suanxue leaned on her and grabbed her hand. Her voice was firm. Don't tell anyone. But Xiao shook her head. Gong Suanxue smiled with pale cheeks. Don't you know my illness? If the high priest had a way, he wouldn't have stayed in his room for the past 2 days waiting for news. The light in Xiaofeng's eyes dimmed. Sect Master was right. The high priest had been searching for a famous doctor for the past half a month, but to no avail. Are we just going to let you get worse every day? Even so, Xiaofeng couldn't convince herself to just watch and do nothing. After spitting out the blood, her chest felt much more relaxed. She used Autumn Maple's arm as support to stand up. I know my own body best. If there's no way to solve this hidden illness, why should I let more people worry and make them worry? Seeing that Xiaofeng still wanted to say something, Gong Suanxue shook her head and stopped her. Tomorrow is the competition. Do you want to destabilize the army? We don't only have the Japanese as an external threat, we also have internal problems. No matter what, we can't make any more mistakes. Hearing this, Xiaofeng bit her lip and nodded. Sect Master, I didn't think it through. Gong Suanxue was relieved to see that she had convinced Xiaofeng. At this critical moment, they couldn't make any mistakes. Otherwise, all her efforts would be for naught. She patted the back of her loyal subordinate's hand. Don't worry. If I can live, I won't give up any chance. Let's get through this crisis first. I cherish my life more than any of you. After all, I still want to see the Yu clan prosper, and the people live in peace. Xiaofeng's eyes reddened again. I understand. I won't be a burden to the Bamboo clan. I only hope that after this incident, you can come clean with the high priest and stop hiding your illness. Gong Suanxue rubbed her head. Okay. Xiaofeng was relieved to see the sect master agree. She helped her into the house. Gong Suanxue looked at the blue sky before returning to the house. The weather should be good tomorrow. The next day, the arena for the competition was set up in Luoqing's drill ground. Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su, and the other important officials of the Sun Clan and the Moon Clan were all seated on this platform. The other 2 platforms were for Gong Sunshui and her trusted aides. They were placed at the 2 ends of the drill ground, which was equivalent to the rear of the battlefield. It was convenient for them to give orders, and no one would be able to spy on them. Because the 2 sides had already discussed the content and method of the competition, the first chess match began very quickly after the 2 sides met. Chess battles used people as chess pieces and soldiers as formations. Not only did it test the intelligence and farsightedness of the players, it also tested their decisiveness in killing. It was the best way to test a person's wisdom, patience, and perseverance. Gong Suanxue was well versed in the art of war since she was young. Although she had never led an army in battle, she was not an armchair strategist. She applied all her knowledge to the imperial court. Otherwise, she would not have been able to slowly control the imperial court from a puppet sect master. She gained real power and forced Suyu into a corner. But in the end, he still fell into her trap and could not make a comeback. However, she did not leave any traces behind. Most people thought that Suyu's greed was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, which was why he brought about his own destruction. In fact, as long as one knew a little about politics, they would be able to detect the secret of this woman's methods. She was terrifyingly smart, and not only was she smart, she was also extremely patient. Perhaps even men could not be like her, calming down and using 3 to 5 years to set up a trap. Therefore, she was not inferior to experienced veterans. Jin Xian was needless to say. He had been by Chu Qingyan's side since he was young. Chu Qingyan never did things according to common sense, so Jin Xian was naturally even more unrestrained. When he used schemes, he could sometimes cut in from tricky angles that others could not think of. This was a great advantage for him. Because he was Chu Qingyan's most valued subordinate, Xiao Su would give him pointers when he had the time. Sometimes, 10 years of study was not as good as a teacher's pointers. What could be more valuable than the personal experience of a general on the battlefield? When he was 10 years old, He had more than one master by his master's side. Xiao cavalry's men who came back from the blood-soaked Azura field were all his masters. They taught him too many things that he could not learn from others. Moreover, in order to have the capital to settle down in this world, in order to live up to his master's expectations, and in order to be able to protect his master, he had put in a lot of hard work in many aspects. He had been in the imperial court and had been through many trials and tribulations on the battlefield. His temperament had been tempered to become more and more stable with each passing year. It was also because of this that he was able to shoulder everyone's burden when they set foot in North Korea this time. True knowledge came from practice. This was what his master had told him. He used the Japanese's counterattack this time as a test for himself. If there was something wrong, he would correct it. If there was nothing wrong, he would work even harder. Now he did not dare to say that he was invincible, but he could at least be a general. Thus a man and a woman who were about the same age held chess pieces in their hands. Their gazes were like torches as they coldly and mercilessly played chess. There was a huge chessboard on the spectator stand. Once someone from each side placed a piece, someone would place the piece on the board, so that everyone could see the situation of their game. The Emperor Emeritus, who was usually lively, was sitting quietly in his chair. He stroked his beard as he watched the situation on the stage. Father Chu watched the soldiers below the stage draw their swords and fight. He scratched his head and asked, "They're fighting so fiercely. Can you tell who's winning and who's losing?" The Emperor Emeritus smiled and shook his head. "I can't tell at the moment. Miss Gongsuan's chess play is steady and meticulous. Jin Xian's moves are sly and unexpected. It's only been a while since they started. Slowly watch, this will be a matchless game." Father Chu felt that there was nothing interesting about watching the black and white chess pieces on the stage. He was more interested in watching the battle below. Because everyone on the stage was watching attentively, it was relatively quiet. Thus, she also heard her grandfather's words. She nodded in agreement. Gong Sun Shue's chess play was indeed steady. She looked at all three moves as she played. Sometimes, when you saw that she seemed to have placed a dead chess piece, you would forget about it after a while. Later, you would realize that the chess piece had come back to life. It turned out that she had unknowingly set a trap for people to fall into. No wonder even Big Ice Cube said that this person was a rare talent. However, Jin Xian was not bad either. He had his own way of playing. He seemed to be charging around recklessly, but in reality, he had already set a trap for people to jump into. These two people were like two foxes, smart and cunning. Everyone was looking forward to seeing who would win next. Chapter 1693. Time passed bit by bit, and the cups of tea on the table were changed one after another. The chess game was not over yet, but it was gradually coming to an end. Those who understood the art of war could see that both sides had entered a stalemate. Unlike the swift and decisive moves they had made at the beginning, the following two people had to think for a while before placing a piece. However, everyone present was patient. There were civil officials and military generals among the spectators. To them, this chess battle was very rare. Some of the soldiers' eyes shone brightly. They felt that after watching this match, they would benefit a lot more than reading a few military books. As long as one had the heart, they would be able to learn a lot. After all, this was a rare match between experts. Just as the retired emperor had said, this was an unprecedented chess battle. Chu Qingyan looked at Xining, who was clutching her handkerchief nervously, and couldn't help but smile. She reached out and patted the back of her hand. "Don't be nervous. Your family's Jin Xian has been through hundreds of battles. He won't be defeated so easily." Xining was comforted by her master, and her heart relaxed. In front of her was Xiao, who had been staring intently at the chess game. She didn't think much and said, "Don't worry. For your family's ice beauty to be able to sit in this position, her ability shouldn't be underestimated." After saying that, she suddenly felt that something was amiss. Xining and Xiao looked at her at the same time, their gazes somewhat aggrieved. It was Xiao Su who couldn't stand it anymore. He pulled her hand and shook his head with a smile. "According to what you said, This game won't be able to determine the winner. Chu Qingyan was embarrassed. That was indeed the case. After all, she couldn't bear to see these two people lose. She wailed and fell into his arms. She really didn't know who to support. Xiao Su caressed her face. Just watch the match. Don't think too much. You can't change the situation. When Chu Qingyan heard that, her gaze turned from Xining and Xiao Yao to the two sides of the table. Her gaze was filled with helplessness. Yes, they could coexist peacefully in private, but in a real situation, they were shouldering different expectations and responsibilities. Thus, she couldn't force anything. She could only hope that things wouldn't get worse. Just as Chu Qingyan was lost in thought, the game ended. A calm and clear voice without any regret came from the stage. I've lost. Sect Master Morong is indeed a young talent. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Sect Master Gongsun is too humble. I was just lucky. The conversation between the two sides ended the game. Chu Qingyan looked at the chessboard in a daze. The black pieces were almost all eaten up, and the white pieces occupied most of the land. Gongsun Shui was black, and Jin Xian was white. The Sun Moon tribe and the Sun Moon tribe had different expressions. The Sun clan was elated, wild with joy. The Moon clan was completely silent, their mood gloomy. The unimportant spectators, on the other hand, expressed that they enjoyed watching this chess battle to their heart's content. No wonder it was a battle between the two supreme rulers of the two races. They had not been looking forward to it for so long. The two sides met in the stands. Gongsun Shui looked at the young and handsome face in front of her, and smiled sincerely. You played very well. This is the first time I've played so much. Jin Xian cupped his hands in greeting. Same here. The Sun clan and the Moon clan were like fire and water on the stage. Neither side was willing to give way to the other. Now that they saw their sect master talking to the other side so amiably, they were confused. Did they walk into the wrong place? Originally, the second round of the competition was to follow, but when Jin Xian was talking to Gongsun Xue just now, he noticed that her face was slightly pale, so he moved the competition to 2 hours later. Both sides had no objections, so the two sides returned to their own resting areas and waited for the second round of the competition. Gongsun Shui vomited blood as soon as she returned to her tent. Her entire body was sore, and she leaned against the back of the chair. Qiu Feng was so scared that she was about to cry again. She opened her eyes with great effort and smiled helplessly. How come I didn't know you could cry so much before? Qiu Feng sniffled. You're so sick now. How can I bear to watch? I just used too much of my brain just now. My body can't take it anymore. That's right. Playing chess was an extremely exhausting thing. It was said in the books that extreme wisdom leads to injury. She was probably trying to prove this saying right now. Qiu Feng begged. Then what should we do? There's still a game later. Why don't we call it off? Gongsun Shui shook her head. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you know what the consequences are if we call it off? That's admitting defeat. Am I the kind of person who gives up without a fight? But, Qiu Feng still wanted to say something, but she was stopped by her. Don't worry. I've already made preparations. Go and get the bottle from the wooden box. Qiu Feng didn't suspect anything and immediately ran over. She opened the wooden box that her master gave her this morning, and took out a plain bottle. Although she was a little curious, she immediately handed it over. Gongsun Shui poured out a black pill from the bottle and swallowed it. Qiu Feng immediately served her water. She drank 2 mouthfuls of water, and closed her eyes to rest for a while. Her face quickly became rosy and healthier than before. Her tiredness was swept away. When she opened her eyes again, her eyes were bright and clear. There was no trace of illness at all. Qiu Feng had been watching her closely. When she saw the scene, she was surprised. Master, this medicine is so magical. Your complexion is much better now. What medicine is this? How come I've never seen it before? Gongsun Shui smiled calmly. Of course it's a good medicine. This medicine could help her quickly recover her strength and suppress the hidden illness in her body, showing her best side. However, it could only last for a few hours. Once the medicine lost its effect, her body would deteriorate very quickly. it would be even more serious than before. After all, it was a medicine of the tiger and wolf. But she had no other choice. Xiao Feng didn't notice the sadness that flashed through her eyes. Joy appeared on her face. Then this subordinate wishes sect master a victory in the next battle. Gongsun Shui smiled. Because of her defeat just now, the people of the Yu clan were in a panic. The high priest brought people to calm them down, which gave her a moment of peace. She closed her eyes and thought about many things. Only when the gongs and drums sounded did she open her eyes. She changed into neat clothes and lifted the curtain to walk out. Xiao Yao walked up and down in the stands. Because their identities were more sensitive, he couldn't go backstage to cheer her on. He could only wait anxiously for time to pass. When the time of the competition approached, he looked up at the tent of the Yu clan and saw her lift the curtain and walk out. He rarely saw her wear anything other than a silk dress. Last time, she had sent a letter of challenge to Jean Xian. That snow blue robe had stunned him. Now she was wearing a snow blue robe. Under the sunlight, the sword at her waist reflected a cold light. It made her already cold temperament even sharper like ice. Everyone in the field was stunned, but they didn't dare to get close. They were afraid that they would blaspheme this snow lotus that seemed to come from the heavenly mountain. She walked out slowly. Her aura was grand and solemn. Even Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. What a domineering queen. Xiao Yao's chest surged with pride. It was as if he was the one being praised and felt honored. Look, this was his person. His future princess consort. Not only was she as beautiful as a flower, but she could also protect the country. Just as he was immersed in his happy fantasy, the second round of the competition began. Chapter 1694. The battlefield had been cleaned up. Now the two of them stood in the middle and cupped their fists at each other. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Whether it was in the stands or below the stands, no one dared to speak loudly. They stared unblinkingly at the two people below the stands. This was not a simple competition. It concerned the future of the two clans. The high priest had just comforted the officials. When he returned, the competition was about to begin. He did not have the chance to meet the sect master. Now that he saw her as usual, he was relieved. The sect master had told him not to worry. He did not expect that they would lose the first battle. Even the calm high priest could not help but sweat. However, he could not panic. The officials were watching. He had to be the strongest shield for the sect master. Moreover, the sect master had been taught by an expert. She had a high chance of winning. Thinking of this, he was slightly relieved. In the stands, Mr. Chu was very troubled. If one side was someone he didn't know, Father Chu would definitely bring Howling Chi back to their old business and perform an earth-shattering cheering dance. Unfortunately, he knew both sides today. He propped up his chin in distress as he watched the duel below. However, Chu Qingyan felt that her father should not do it again. Back then, she was embarrassed by him and wanted to finish the competition as quickly as possible. The referee made the rules clear. No one was allowed to hurt anyone. The two of them, who carried the hopes of many parties, looked at each other and nodded. The referee left and the competition officially began. Gong Suanshui used a sword. Jean Xian also used a sword. When both sides drew their swords, everyone felt that the atmosphere had instantly turned cold. Even the howling winter wind had stopped. Because his opponent was a woman, Jean Xian could not take the initiative to attack. Gong Suanshui knew what he was thinking. She raised her sword and attacked him. When the two swords collided in midair, the clang sound seemed to have struck everyone's eardrums, and the sound lingered in the air. But soon, the two of them started to attack fiercely. Every move was fast. The sound of the collision became more intense. The crowd could not help but hold their breaths. One of them was like a dragon, smooth and flowing. The other countered every move with an imposing aura. For a moment, it was difficult to distinguish between them. That's a good move. She can attack from that angle. She's so fast, the Moon Clan fan said. Her reaction speed is unparalleled. Not only can she block the opponent's unexpected move, but she can also counterattack. That's amazing, the Sun Clan fan said. Cheng Yanluo sighed. I didn't expect Miss Gong Suanxue to be so skilled. As a woman, I'm ashamed. Kong Ling comforted her. It's okay. Everyone has their own strengths. Your medical skills are excellent, so others can't envy you. Xiao, who was at the side, also quickly joined the Moon Clan's camp and became a fan of the Ice Beauty. His future wife was not only as beautiful as a flower, but she could also protect the country and fight with swords. In the future, she wouldn't need to be afraid of others bullying her. Gong Suanxue didn't know what he was thinking. If she knew, she would probably roll her eyes at him for being so shameless. Gong Suanxue looked at the long sword on the ground and slowly withdrew her hand. She smiled at the person standing in front of her under the sun. Everyone present was silent for a moment. As the saying goes, the person lives with the sword and dies with the sword. So Gong Suanxue lost? Gong Suanxue smiled faintly at Jin Xian. I lost. Jin Xian cupped his hands. Thank you for letting me win. Jin Xian didn't know why, but he had an illusion that the person in front of him was smiling brightly. She looked relaxed, as if something had been lifted from her shoulders. When he looked at her again, she had already turned and walked towards the spectator stand. The people cheered and immediately surrounded Jinxin, congratulating him. Gong Suanxue heard the excited laughter behind her and smiled lightly. But soon, she calmed down and walked towards her officials who were silent and didn't know how to react. She walked up to the high priest. I've lost. I've disappointed you. Lan Si gripped his cane tightly and said word by word in disappointment and pity. Sect Master, what did you promise this old man before? I didn't want you to do this, but what did you say? Looking at his sad eyes, Gong Suanxue sighed and said, High Priest, I didn't lie. I won't go back on my words. Lan Si didn't believe her, but seeing how determined she was, he was confused. Sect Master, what are you playing at? I'm confused. You'll know soon enough. Gong Suanxue smiled at him and walked up to the spectator stand. Gong Suanxue's loss was reasonable, but also not reasonable. After all, when two tigers fight, one will be hurt. Xiao stood at the wooden ladder and watched her walk up. His face was full of pity. He opened his mouth but didn't know how to comfort her. She was a woman, but she had to bear a heavy responsibility that even a 9-foot man might not be able to bear. His heart ached for her, and he wanted to go up and hug her. Gong Suanxue smiled at him. You don't have to say anything. I feel your heart. At this time, she saw Jinxin walk up the stage and walk to the center of the stage. The two kings met. It was time to fulfill the promise. The climax of the competition was here. However, everyone suddenly thought of something important. One of the Sun officials said in an unfriendly tone, Sect Master you didn't mention the stakes when she declared war. The Yu officials, who were originally crestfallen, looked up in unison. That's right, the two sides only talked about the content of the competition, but didn't mention what the stakes were. Chu Qingyan and the others were stunned. That was indeed the case. However, when Gong Suanxue declared war, her intentions were clear. She did not want the people to suffer and the people to lose their homes. What she meant was that the two of them would have to fight each other. However, there was no black and white agreement, nor was there any mention of the stakes. If the Yu clan did not admit it, then this competition would have been in vain. Jin Xian frowned. He thought of this as well. The Yu clan smiled happily. The Sun clan was furious. The situation became tense. There was a strong smell of gunpowder in the air. It was as if a war was about to break out. At this time, Gong Suanxue spoke to break the silence. The stakes were set on the day of the competition. What? Everyone didn't understand. Jin Xian looked at her in surprise. He waited for her to continue. If I win, the Sun clan and Yu clan's grudge will be written off. The Sun clan will return the Yu clan city and we will mind our own business. Someone from the Sun clan shouted. Then what if you lose? The quiet and powerful voice spread throughout the drill ground. If I am not skilled enough and lose, then the Yu clan will be mine. The Sun and Yu clan will be mine. I will step down and there will be no more Sect Master Yu. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.